I don't know if I had a picture of a dream marriage.
I wasn't a Christian, had no plans to be. I probably thought, oh, maybe later, but I just was trying to have a good time.
Partied on yachts, South Beach, smoking weed 3 to 5 times a day, in school, sleeping with God knows how many people.
Yep.
I met her the first weekend I got here, but I was coming out of a relationship breakup that was also very emotionally traumatic because this was the first one that I had that was like with a Christian. I thought I heard God's voice about that person.
Yep.
I don't think I can like trust my own ability to hear God's voice again in that department. But then I see her on Christmas Eve at the Orpheum Theater. And dude, it was like a Disney movie. He said, I want you just to pray for her. And I was like, until when? Until I say stop.
I'm talking to the guy, convincing him like, this is your fault. And he's like, let's just settle this between us. I was like, I think I'm gonna call someone. And so he takes off running. And then I got to see what Cap was made of that.
And I just start sprinting after him like, stop that guy.
We fight every Tuesday.
It's like Tuesday was our
'Cause we're
day to
together.
like, we were finally together and then we fought. And we just got in like an argument. First one to the cross wins. Her blood sugars were in the 400s. She was so far beyond that she was gonna potentially go into organ failure at any moment. I was on my face and I just said, God, what gives? Like, is this how you treat your servants?
How did you support Joy mentally through that process?
Honestly, for a lot of it, I didn't even allow myself to like feel.
Today we are joined by Cap and Joy Chatfield. We are so excited that you guys are here. Some of our closest friends. I get the chance to work out with Cap
Yeah.
a couple times a week.
Yep.
And Bree and Joy get a chance to work out.
And talk.
That's what I was going to say. Their jaws get a lot of the work, but it's fun, right? Like we go there to have fun, and it's the importance of community. Capus is professional YouTuber? Is that like...
Yeah. Professional YouTuber, content creator, but YouTube's the main platform.
Yep.
And then I'm an assistant pastor at Love Church and kind of have some other entrepreneurial stuff.
If you're an individual who loves my perspective on things happening in the world, particularly through a spiritual perspective, but you're not able to easily get a hold of me in the comments on YouTube or on Instagram or other social media profiles, trust me, I also feel very frustrated about that. I try my best to respond to all of them as quickly as possible, but with the amount that comes through, it becomes very challenging. But I have an option for you. If you're very serious about getting my expert advice on anything related to entrepreneurship, relationships, social media, current events, or even anything spiritual at all, I've just created a profile on an app called Connect, and this will allow you to connect with me via text message or video message or even schedule a video call, and I can respond to you in as little as 24 hours. So my invitation to you is to go to Connect.com or download the Connect app to your phone. Search my name, it's pretty easy to find, Cap Chatfield, KAPCHATFIELD, and feel free to ask me any question. I would love to be able to answer that question for you as soon as possible. So please do that today. You can download the app from any app store, or you can click the link in the description of this episode or this video to ask me any question on Connect today. Now, back to the episode.
Kind of a serial entrepreneur and just a dreamer. That's what I love about Cap. And then his lovely wife, Joy, they have 4 kids together. Man, ages, how old's Brave right now?
7.
He just turned 7 like not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Brave that's 7.
Raven's 5. Quinn just turned 3. And Charlie is 9 months.
Come on.
Boy, girl.
Yeah.
A full house and just going for it. And some of the happiest people that we know, these guys have had a really cool story. So we're excited to share it with you all today. It's going to be really cool. We're going to get into some marriage stuff, probably talk business a little bit. 2 different upbringings. Cap didn't grow up in the Midwest, so moved to Omaha because, I mean, why wouldn't you move to Omaha? So we'll probably talk about that story a little bit, how he got here. And Joy, you're originally from like this area, right?
Here.
Fremont? Or are you from, where are you from?
I'm from Omaha. My family is from Fremont, but...
Got it. Not far from here. So you guys have been married for how many years?
Coming on 9 years. Almost 9 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Married for 9 years. And tell us a little bit, like, let's just go back to kind of how you guys grew up a little bit. Did you have marriages that you looked at and said, that's what I want when I get older? What did the dream marriage look like for each of you? And maybe Cap, if you could go first with that. Give us a little bit about your upbringing.
So I don't know if I had a picture of a dream marriage. My parents thankfully stayed married.
Awesome.
They had some rough patches. We had a little. Mostly, I had a drama-free upbringing, but there were some things that I saw in my parents' marriage, and I obviously was a train wreck too. So I can't pretend like I had everything figured out. But I didn't. Let me just say this, because now being a pastor, and more importantly, just being a believer, and have been forgiven of my sin and given a playbook for life through the Bible of like, this is what marriage actually looks like. Now I know. Now I have a vision for what a healthy marriage actually looks like. Because other than that, it's just kind of like opinion, right? But everybody in my extended family, immediate extended family, got divorced. So my parents' marriage was the only marriage out of all of his siblings and all of my mom's siblings that stayed together.
Wow.
So it was actually
roughly how many people is that? Like,
so my dad was one of four.
Okay.
And then my mom had a sister. So, and everybody else got divorced. So my parents, their marriage was the only marriage that I knew in my family growing up that stayed together.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had friends that had marriages that stayed together. I had a lot of friends that got divorced. So, but I had no blueprint. It was kind of like, it was a toss up of like,
Yep.
You never know what you're going to get. Ours was obviously the outlier. My parents was. But what was really interesting, I think, was meeting her and then seeing her parents, because I mean, her parents are like some of the most godly people I've ever met. Yep. And their marriage was like fun and lighthearted, but deep. And the commitment there, the covenant of marriage, like is what I saw uniquely in them. So you can share about what you saw growing up. Did you feel like you had a picture of like, man, with my parents' marriage, I want a marriage like that?
I was surrounded by really healthy marriages. Like I'm trying to think if I had even one aunt or uncle that got divorced. I'm trying to think. Oh, a few, just a couple here and there. But I was really surrounded with most of our family, and then our community in the church, just a lot of healthy marriages. And so I didn't see a lot of divorce or experience a lot of divorce close, but I still, thankfully, because of some people that I knew had gone to divorce, I did have like a fear of the Lord of marrying the right person, because I knew that it wasn't inevitable to have the marriages that I looked to. I knew that I had to pick the right person, and obviously centered around Jesus, even though for most of my life I wasn't living for him. But so, yeah, very different.
Yeah. What did that, so I think that's one of the really cool things, right? We show up at marriage and we've got 2 suitcases full of stuff that we have to figure out how we're going to unpack that. Oftentimes we don't unpack those prior to hitting the altar, and then we've got ultimately a mess on our hands because the suitcases come unpacked and we've got to go through those clothes. Your guys' upbringing and what that looked like, Joy, you just were starting to allude to that. What was that like for you? Because you were a pastor's kid, right? Mm-hmm. Your dad was a pastor, and then when did he start his ministry with Fresh Start? How old were you about that time?
2007 is when he went to make his ministry a nonprofit.
Okay. So during that time, where were you at in your life?
I wasn't a Christian, had no plans to be. I probably thought, oh, maybe later, but I just was trying to have a good time.
Wasn't the right time, so you were just living life.
Right.
And then when did you make this decision to say, okay, I want to come home?
Around my 24th birthday, I decided that I was like, I think I'm going to circle back to the way I was raised. And I called my dad, and I had like almost a picture perfect prodigal son story. I said, can I move back in with you? Can we start over? Can we do this? And I think that my parents obviously were traumatized by the way I was living. And so I don't think the decision for me to move back in with them was easy. But I said, I'm just going to live with you for 6 months. I'm going to change my phone number. I want to start all over. And I ended up living with them for 6 years until I got married. And it was so cool because one day I did the math of my mom remembers the day I started my rebellion, it was like 12 years old, and I came home and informed her that I wasn't going to be a Christian after some Wednesday night church. I don't even remember what happened. But anyways, so from 12 to 18 is 6 years. And then I lived with them for 6 years. And I was like, the Lord restored what the locust ate, because I had no relationship with my parents for that long. And so then those 6 years that I lived with them, we rebuilt our relationship, and it was like the most redemptive, like they were my best friends. So it was really cool.
I love that. So you came home at age 12
Yeah.
and were like, I'm not, just so you know, I'm not going to be a Christian for now.
Something like that. I don't remember it. My mom remembers. She was like, wait, why? Why? So I don't know. It's kind of funny because I don't remember, but I do remember kind of rebelling and kind of not entering into the church world anymore.
A lot of kids probably go down that path or at some point in their life. What do you remember what how your parents responded during that time? What were the things that you can look at now and be like, wow, they still loved me. They loved me right where I was at.
I feel like they had a lot of self-control because I feel like if I had me as a kid, there would be a lot of things that I would probably want to say or do that I don't think they did. They had a lot of like boundaries on me, but then they also let me, spend the night at friends' houses and it wasn't completely shut down, but they weren't going to enable sin in the house. Yep. Like they're like, you live here, you're not going to live that way if you live here. So they did have boundaries, but also there's stuff they couldn't control. And I feel like, I don't know. It was like I knew they loved me, but I had no desire for a relationship with them. So I didn't really care that we weren't close.
Yep. So, and you spent 6 years like this.
Yeah. And really longer. I moved out as soon as I was done with hair school and could afford it. And then I barely saw them. So
made your money and left.
Yeah.
A lot of people do that, man. We see that all the time in what we're doing right now, just even with different marriages and different kids and throughout the entire cycle of life. You get to the spot where you're like, okay, I'm going to make this decision. But then us as parents, as married couples, as we come together, how we navigate that, I really think is one of those things that it's such a privilege. Like from your standpoint, your parents of saying, hey, we're going to love her unconditionally. When you decided to come back home, and you mentioned the prodigal son.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that a little bit for those that don't know exactly what that story is. What did that look like for you?
You know what's lame? Every month, massive corporations are poisoning Americans like you and me with toxic products made in other countries in the US, and all while promoting demonic agendas like Planned Parenthood and Pride Month. And the worst part is that you and I have been increasing their power by buying their products every month. Until now. Switch with Cap is a project that helps shoppers like you and me save money by buying clean, high quality, non-perishable consumer products like shampoos, toothpaste, supplements, etc. every single month from an American manufacturer that is preserving common sense values. It's remarkably affordable, no hassle, and 100% risk-free. And the products are outstanding, if I can say so myself. Book a free call with my team today by visiting switchwithcap.com, link below, to learn how you can join thousands of other families who have made the switch for their families, their country, and their values. And our team would love to pray for you on the call as well. Again, book a call with our team today by visiting switchwithcap.com.
I don't know. I feel like I was like so full of shame. Like I don't deserve for you to let me come back. Like I've wasted my whole life, everything that you've invested in me, tried to teach me, even to like down to managing my money. I was in debt. I had no money to my name and I was owed people money. And so the grace that my parents had to be like, they were like, yes, move back in. I remember the first night I moved in, my dad putting a TV in my room. Like they just like lavished me and welcomed me home.
Cats too. Right?
Oh yeah, and they got me cats. I was into cats then. Now I don't like them.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they just like
Here's
it was the ring and the robe. They were like, you can't just come home, but like we're going to lavish you. And there was accountability too, like a ton of accountability, but I asked for it. And so it wasn't like this, like, oh, I'm moving back in with my parents and now I have to do this, this, and this. It was like they made it possible for the goal. Like the goal that I had was to start over. And they said, if you're going to move in, find a church community. It doesn't have to be the one we're a part of. You can go find your own, but you have to have something once a week that you do. It doesn't even have to be on Sunday, but find something. And so it was
Dude,
cool.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, and I was like, okay, and I don't even know how to be a Christian or seek the Lord or pray or anything. Like, I grew up in a Christian school and as a pastor's kid, but I had never done those spiritual disciplines on my own. It was always like they were my parents.
Yep.
So I knew them, but I had never done them. So I was so new at this, and it was really cool because I was like, I'm going to pray that I find a church. Like, I don't know. And I did. And it was so funny. And then one of my clients, this guy that I did his hair, I was like, and I'm going to start working out. You're a trainer. I'm going to come to your gym. And then I came to the gym and I met Jill Matlock, Teresa Bedner, Sabrina Wright, and Denise. And they obviously invited me to Love, or it was Calvary at the time. But it was just cool because the Lord knew what community he wanted me to be a part of. And he made the way. He was like, you're going to work out. You're going to meet these people. And then, so it was really cool. He had his hand on it as soon as I repented, you know?
I just think it's so cool that your dad was like, you're home, and he just upgrades your life in every way. You know, the TV in your room, the cats. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's so sweet that,
Yeah.
you know,
he had a financial plan. I got out of debt.
It's just so cool.
He's like, now you're listening. Now I'm going to teach you about money, like stuff like that. And it was really smooth, but it was like, my dad, when he would talk about it from his point of view, I never knew the wrestle that they were having, that they, it was very, very painful. They said, it was one of the most painful trials they've gone through was my rebellion. And so for them to, I'm like, wow, they loved me so well. I would have never known that. So it's cool.
man.
Such a great picture of
amazing.
Jesus, man. Like,
Seriously.
gosh, God's grace on our lives when we make those dumb decisions. And then we want to respond so well in those moments. Oftentimes in our flesh, we don't. But here, your parents, where they modeled it out exactly what they had learned, and then we're able to pass that on to you. And of course, you get surrounded by some amazing women that start to teach you what it looks like to be a godly woman, preparing you for when you get to meet this handsome man to the right of me.
Yeah.
Cap, what was your story like, kind of your upbringing and your faith journey of getting to where you're at right now?
So I want to be very careful about how I frame this, because I want like, my parents are phenomenal people.
Yeah.
They're so hardworking, so generous, so kind. But I also look at my upbringing and I think, like, you don't know what you don't know. And when in my upbringing, I grew up in the DC area, and we were like very committed church people. Like, we went to church every weekend. And my parents, like, I think they did their best to try to incorporate God in our lives. But the church that we were a part of, like, they never told us to open up our Bible during church. It was like, you had these pews. It was a Methodist church. You had these pews, you had your hymnal and your Bible. And I remember growing up, like, the Bible was always dusty. Like, it just wasn't, we always opened up the hymnal to sing, but we never opened up the Bible for doctrine. And I remember going through a confirmation class. So for anyone who's listening who's not familiar with that, in like a Catholic upbringing or like a more traditional church upbringing, like, confirmation is kind of like the Christian bar mitzvah. You turn 13 and it's your opportunity to really, like, own your faith, grab it by the horns and make it real to you. So I was going through a confirmation class, and I wouldn't say it was really my choice. My parents kind of like put me through this class, but I was at least spiritually curious. And I remember we had this confirmation retreat. We were on this like retreat ground, and I was 13 years old, really into skateboarding, like beginning to like I was at a fork in the road. I was either going to like go down this path of skateboarding, the whole skate culture, become very rebellious myself, or there was this thing in me that was very curious about God.
Wow.
And I turned to my reverend and I said, I had a Bible, or there was like a Bible sitting around, and I said, if that book is the key to knowing who this God is, I want to read the whole thing. I want to read it from cover to cover. And I'm looking for some sort of affirmation. some sort of encouragement of like, heck yeah, you can do it. I want to help you. And I remember my reverend said, like, I don't know if you want to do that. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, there's parts of it that get kind of confusing and it gets repetitive. And I just don't want you to get discouraged. And I remember hearing him say that. And I was like, if this guy, the pro, is telling me that I don't need to read this thing, then I'm definitely not ever reading this thing.
Wow.
And now I look back and I'm like, dude, like, you got one job, bro.
Yeah.
And like I'm prime for the picking. And he just totally laid an egg in that moment. And that began this path of me like kind of really going down my own rebellious path.
So that was it for you. You picked rebellion. Fork in the road?
It was the beginning of it.
Okay.
But there was this moment where I felt like I really didn't take church seriously. I did not take the faith seriously. I didn't fully say God wasn't real, but I just was like, like, whatever. Like, no one here really knows what they're doing. But there was a moment in high school when I saw this documentary from this guy named Bill Maher, who's this like, very, he's atheistic, left-leaning talk show host, but he put out this documentary called Religulous. And the whole thing was like making fun of religion, but there was this big target on Christianity. Like Christianity was kind of like the focal point, but he was kind of making fun of all different religions. And I remember I was in my basement and I watched that documentary and I finished the documentary and I could tell you today that there was a severance in the spirit between me and God after I watched that.
Wow.
And I made a decision that I was no longer going to follow God, believe in God. Like that was the day I became an atheist. And it's so wild because I didn't have spiritual language for it, but I knew that like I stepped into darkness. I knew like that was like I was going down a path that was empty but I thought it was freedom. I thought it was like, yes, like I can totally be free to do what I want to do.
So you know that now.
I know that now.
But in that moment, you could tell that there was this.
Oh yeah, in that
happening.
moment, I felt like it was almost as if like
You'd been duped.
Well, here's what it felt like in that moment. Like that moment felt like freedom. That moment felt like if there was a door and God was on the other side of that door, I shut the door and I was like, this is a lot better. Now I can do whatever I want to do and there's no accountability.
Yep.
It's very similar to like the story of Adam and Eve in the garden when, Eve hears this lie from the serpent of like, your life will be way better if you don't follow his rules because he just doesn't want you to become like him.
Yep.
Fun hater.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Adam and Eve, they eat, they rebel, sin enters the world, they're disconnected from God. That's exactly what happened to me. It was like this shutting the door. Wow. I'm cut off, completely cut off. I'm going to do my life my own way. And so that began this whole rebellious journey of skateboarding, etc. And skateboarding itself, by the way, is not the rebellious part, but skateboard culture just has all of this crazy, like openly satanic, like imagery and even worship attached to it. We got David's nodding because he's a part of skate culture and it's just known. It's like, it's this rebellious, like punk rock, like stick it to the man sort of culture, partying, drugs, alcohol, women, all the sort of stuff. The one redemptive quality, at least one of the redemptive qualities of skateboarding for me was the video creation component. So we'd take video cameras, we'd go film our tricks. I'd learn how to edit with all this footage. And then like I really fell in love with the video creation process. And then, so now fast forward a little bit, my dad's telling me like, okay, Cap, like, time for you to pick a college. Mind you, my dad, absolute gangster when it comes to school, got into Harvard Law School and Yale Law School, chose to go to Yale Law School, and now is like one of the top attorneys in the country in DC in his practice. Wow. And then there's me. So like,
and the skateboarder.
Yeah, like so I'm smart in my own ways, but I just wasn't I wasn't book smart like that. It wasn't my world. So Apple fell pretty far from the tree in the academic category. So I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm not going to be like you. Like, I'm very different. I'm probably not going to go to college. And he was like, yo, like you are going to college. We have this whole college fund saved up for you. So like major props to my parents. Like they just really set me up for success in every area of life. But I was like, I don't even know what I want to study. And he said, well, why don't you study film? I was like, film? You can study film? And he's like, yeah, like you're spending all of your time doing these videos. Why don't you go learn how to do this professionally?
Wow. So that was encouragement from your dad.
Dude, I give him so much credit for not trying to fit me in a mold, but like really also not letting me be lazy. And like, he also had this idea still of, you know, you need a degree. Yep. And frankly, my degree, no one asked me for a degree, like to show my degree. Sure. But I did learn a ton, and the networking at college was amazing. So I was like, all right, well, let's look at it. So I ended up going to the University of Miami, and I went to the University of Miami. The 30 for 30 documentary about the U had just come out. Okay. So everyone's excited about the bad boy, convicts versus Catholics, the whole thing, like, you know, Notre Dame, their whole rivalry. But they were also rated #1 party school in the country by Playboy magazine that year.
Let's go.
So I was like,
right on the path.
Sign me up. Like film, party, Miami, let's go. So I go. And I get my fill of everything that you would think you want, like in a fraternity, all these rich kids who had like in Miami, whose families had yachts and things like that, partied on yachts, South Beach, smoking weed 3 to 5 times a day, in school, sleeping with God knows how many people. Yep. It was just disgusting. In hindsight, I thought I was living the dream. Mm-hmm. But what's crazy is I go down this path and I discover very quickly, like, this isn't going anywhere. Like, there's no, like, I'm chasing the wind. Like, it's never satisfying. It's never enough. And then thankfully I had one Christian friend while I was an atheist in college, one Christian friend who sat down with me and shared with me this amazing picture of how the Bible is actually not this irrelevant rule book, but it's a love story. And I had told him, like, I want to make the most, forgive my language, I'm going to say it like I said it. I want to make the most badass romance movies ever. I want that category of genre to be redeemed and to show people that it's not just chick flicks and rom-coms, but love will drive a man to do the most insane things for the person that he loves. Wow. And that's when he told me, like, you would really love the Bible. And I was like, wait, what? And
okay, so back up, because that's huge. So you had this revelation prior to having a relationship with the Lord.
Yes.
You wanted to make romance novels.
Not romance movies.
Romance movies.
Yes.
That showed man's love for a woman.
Yeah, the way that I described it, one of the best things that I learned in film school was this thing called narrative structure. And it's this framework for telling stories that you see, like, any movie, any Marvel movie, any comedy, even a knock-knock joke, like the email copywriting, it all is based off of a very simple framework of storytelling, which for me was the easiest way to describe it was the fairy tale structure. You have a knight in shining armor who is trying to inherit this kingdom, but in order to inherit the kingdom and become a king, he's got to marry a princess, make her his queen. So he finds this princess. Princess one day gets taken captive by a dragon and put under a curse and separated from this knight in a high tower. And so what does the knight in shining armor do? The knight in shining armor goes, slays the dragon, rescues the princess, kisses her to break the curse so they can live happily ever after in their kingdom together. That's when my friend said, you would love the Bible.
Wow.
And I was like, tell me more. I've never, because think about my story, bro. Like, my only understanding of the Bible was that even my reverend told me it wasn't worth reading.
It's made for collecting dust.
Basically. And he said, well, you told me the whole fairy tale structure, right? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, think of it like this. Jesus is the knight in shining armor, and we were supposed to have a relationship with him as the princess, the bride of Christ, the people that he created, destined for relationship with him. But because of our rebellion, we get taken captive by a dragon named Satan, who puts us under a curse called sin, separates us not in a high tower, but destined for hell, separated from God forever. And what does God do? God sends his son Jesus as the knight in shining armor to slay the dragon named Satan on a cross called Calvary, giving his life for us, raising himself from the dead on the third day, breaking the curse of sin, not by a kiss, but by faith. And when we put our faith in him, we are restored in the right standing relationship with him. And we get to inherit a kingdom with him and rule with him happily ever after.
Yep.
Come on.
That's the story of the Bible.
Yep. So what you just laid out is the gospel message.
That's the gospel.
And
That's
if
the
there's
good news.
Anybody listening right now that wants to say, yes, I want that, drop a note in the chat, get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that you get connected.
For sure.
Kappas just shared the gospel message and what it's all about,
Amazing.
the redemptive power of what Jesus can do for all of us if we make that decision.
Which is really crazy that like you invite us to talk today about our marriage, because like that was really true for me. Was I saw my parents' marriage was on the fritz in college. I was a guy who wore my heart on my sleeve.
Yep.
And constantly got my heart broken. And I had this vision of like, if we got romance right as a culture, and men understood what it meant to
Yep.
lay down their life for a woman, and women understood like they didn't have to play this game to like get in a guy's wallet and just like, this was Miami, like
Right.
this was like everyone was doing this.
It's like,
And I was just trying to get a meaningful relationship going, and it wasn't working. And I was like, dude, like no wonder there's so much chaos in the world. There's no wonder so many people grow up in broken homes, because we don't have romance figured out.
Yep.
And so that entered this conversation, and then a couple weeks later, I had a personal encounter with God in my car on my own, and he just said, give it up, man. Like you're trying to do all of this on your own. You are stuck in sin, like crazy amount of sin. And I'm the only way out, and I need you to ask for forgiveness. And so I cried out to God, and I went into my car one way, literally was in my car on the way to the gym. I went into my car one way, and I left the car having been forgiven of my sin, born again, heard the voice of God. He told me, this is day one. And I'm going to walk with you this entire journey. And it was the first time I understood a relationship with God. And so that's my story of coming to know God. And then fast forward, I finished college with now the relationship with God that I had, and a Bible degree, not a Bible degree, a film degree.
yep.
And I was like, okay, God, where do you want me to start my film career? LA, New York, Miami, like take your pick, God. And he said, how about Omaha, Nebraska? I was like, where's Omaha, Nebraska?
Get a map out.
Yeah.
We just had to do that the other day. We were talking to somebody, and he was like, where is Omaha? I've
Just
gotta
right
look
in the
for this.
middle,
Yeah.
dude. So then I moved here, and then that's where I met Joy, and that began our relationship.
Awesome. So where'd you guys meet at?
Church.
Okay. So how did you end up at would have been Calvary at the time?
So after I graduated, I had met Pastor Todd from, our pastor
Yep.
here. He had come down to Florida for a discipleship program that I was actually in. I finished school. I went through a 4-month discipleship program, basically Bible college meets Survivor. It was intense. I won't go into the details of that, but it was as I described. He comes down for a week to teach. I met him. I showed him some of my video stuff, and I found out that he had actually been praying for a videographer to come and serve at the church.
Okay.
So I was like, dude, like, hey, if you have a job opening, like I'd love to come and work there. And he said, well, we don't have a job, but if you want to come and serve, we'd love to have you, which is church language for if you want to come work for free.
Right.
So I was like, it's not exactly what I was expecting after graduating.
LA, New York,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Omaha, free.
Let me go to Omaha for free.
Right.
But God spoke to me in a dream, and he asked me, he said, do you want a career or do you want your calling?
Wow.
And I was like, well, I want your calling for my life. And he said, well, it's going to begin with you serving and not going the same path that everyone else goes down for a film career. So I woke up and I knew that he was telling me to go by faith to Omaha, Nebraska and be a part of this church plant here. And so I packed my Jeep, drive halfway across the country, and I get planted at Calvary at the time. And then I met her the first weekend I got here, but I was still kind of, I was coming out of a relationship breakup that was also very, very emotionally traumatic, because this was the first one that I had that was like with a Christian.
Okay.
And so I was like, man, like this is hard. I don't know if I can I thought I heard God's voice about that person.
Yep.
I don't think I can trust my own ability to hear God's voice again in that department. But then I see her on Christmas Eve at the Orpheum Theater. And dude, it was like a Disney movie. Like I saw her and she was like glowing. She had like copper hair at that time, which I keep on telling her like, hey babe, if you ever want to go back to copper, like I think it'd be kind of cool. So just, think about that, pray about that. I love the blonde look, but I don't know. That was the day that I fell in love with her.
We were talking about this last night because Jordan gets on. Well, all of us were when we were having our pre-call. Remember, she got on and her hair she had just blown dried it. And it was like, wow, like, dude,
the lion mane, her hair's so thick.
So you go to the Orpheum for church and you meet the Lion King live, and you're like, okay, this is my girl.
So it's like, dude, it was like sparkles and fireworks, and I went and I hid behind this pillar, like what is happening to my heart right now? It was like such a Disney movie moment, bro. It was so corny, but so fun at the same time. But I had this talk with God, and I was like, God, like
behind the pillar?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I can't do it. I can't go through the same heartbreak that I went through again. And he said, I remember him saying to me, like, you can trust me, but we're going to do this my way this time. Because I think I had so many bad habits of like seduction and, playing the romance game in college that I still hung on to.
Yep.
Even as a Christian, he was like, no, we're going to do this like my way. So he said, all I want you to do is pray for her. Like, you're not going to spit game. You're not going to reach out to her. You're not going to ask her out. I had a playbook. Yeah. He's like, you could throw that playbook in the trash and you're going to do this by my play. And, I was like, okay, so what do we do? He said, I want you just to pray for her. And I was like, until when? Until I say stop. I was like, okay. So I just start praying for her. It was a 4-month period of like,
wow.
And I would see her at these small groups. I'll tell you what, this is what was so funny. And we'll get you talking soon because we actually want your perspective through this journey.
Oh, that's where we're going next.
But it's so funny because like we were in a small group together, a young adult small group on Thursday. Mm-hmm. You were in a small group with Denise on Friday morning. And then we were also part of another mixed group on Saturday night, and then there was church on Sunday.
So 4 in a row.
4 days in a row, bro.
Banger.
Was like, I see her in this group, can't talk to her, can't even look at her. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is torture. And then, but I was like, hey, at least I would stay at the Doxson's house and like sleep at their house on Thursday night. And then I'd wake up and I would walk past the small group. It was a 2-second interaction, but I lived for that 2-second interaction.
Love it.
Dude, to walk past her.
It's the romance. We hadn't even met.
That's what I'm saying. But it was all these little touch points. Yeah. And the worst day was Sunday. Because Sunday I would see her and then I would say, I'm not going to see her again until Thursday night. And so it was like every week was just that. And it was so dorky because like.
Oh, no, it's not. I mean,
no, but listen. Because like there was these moments where like we caught eyes and I would like go home and I'd be like, yes, she knows I exist. This is totally going to work. She loves me. And then the next day she doesn't even see me. And I'm like, God, what are we doing? Like, this is not going anywhere. Or I see her talking to some other guy and I'm like, God, no, it's not going to happen. So it was this emotional roller coaster. But what was so wild was
dramatic.
It was so dramatic. But I would wake up every morning at like 4:30 in the morning and just spend time with God, like for 2 hours. I was single, had a new job. So I was like, I just had that time. And I would spend so much time in the Word and I would spend time praying for her. And I look back and I think like, dude, that was like, God had me in this incubator season where I needed to mature. Because I eventually found out I was 22. She was 29. I was like, dude, there's I have no chance with her. I'm a child.
Yep.
She's like the mature woman and I'm this kid. I'm like, dude, there's no way that I'll pull this off. But then after this 4-month period, I remember he released me and he was like, you're free to go pursue her.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this like encouragement card for her. And I remember seeing her at church one day and I said, hey, I wanted you to know that I've been praying for you. And I want you to know, like, God told me to pray for this for you specifically. And I want you to know that I'm in your corner. So I wasn't trying to be weird, but I was trying to like show her like, but basically God was showing me she was so content with God, like as her father. I think that's probably what also increased my attraction to her was like, she wasn't like, she didn't need me. Mm-hmm. And God was basically like, you want to come to her, you got to come through me. You got to spend time with me as her father. And so I gave her this card of like the things I was praying for her. She texted me after church, after she had read it. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's like you were reading my journal. How did you know that I needed prayer in those specific areas? And then I was like, hey, you want to hang out on Tuesday? And then that was our first date. She didn't know it was a date. We'll talk about how she didn't think it was a date that day, but that's how we began actually communicating. So
it was for you. It was a date.
It was absolutely a date for me.
And it was on Tuesday, so we got to fill that gap between Sunday and Thursday.
So she was like, just if I can say this one thing, we're going to hang out, and we're about to go pick her up, and she was like, hey, do you want to come over and meet my cats? I was like, sure, like I'll meet whoever you want me to meet. So the cats that her parents gifted her, I met on our first date.
It's one of my
Misha and Lily, right? Yeah.
Favorite things about talking to you guys is there's so many stories in every little piece of it. Like all of a sudden we'll be having a conversation and there's just like the most random thing that's happened in the midst of that. So it's always fun.
Yeah,
here's the cats.
Details.
Okay.
Cats.
So you guys meet, or you guys get your first date. Joy, from your perspective, what was that time frame like for you? What did it look like for you to like practically be thinking? Were you thinking about a husband? Were you attracted to Kappas at that time? What did that look like for you?
Okay, so it's funny, he was saying he was like in an incubator of just soaking in, studying the word. I was too. I had just had a really like extensive foot surgery where they were like, it's basically like a 6-month recovery. It was like all these tendons. I really messed it up. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to study the Bible for 6 months, like, and do nothing else. Cause I barely could do hair. I was like in a boot and I had to have a scooter. And so I'm like, nope, I'm going to sit and I'm going to heal my foot and study the Bible. So I was also in that season. It was really cool that God was like preparing us both before he brought us together, which I wouldn't want it any other way. But it was like, obviously, I'm not going to lie. It was like a lonely season in the way of like not a huge social life, I guess right then. But, and because of that season, I really got to know, the Lord doctrinally. And I was so filled with faith that if I was going to get married one day, he was big enough to do it. I didn't need to try to make it happen. I didn't need to put myself out there. I didn't need to like look a certain way, be a certain place, be friends with anyone specific. Like all I needed was to know that I was in line with what he had for me, and whoever my husband was going to cross that path if I was on the right path. So I had a deep revelation of that. So I was so at peace with like, what am I doing today, God? What am I doing this week, this month, God? And I know that we're gonna like everything's gonna fall into place in that. And so I saw Cap and I knew how old he was and I thought he was great. And I remember thinking, he's so great. He's so fiery and he's great looking. He's going to make like some 22-year-old girl so happy.
Wow.
Like I was like thinking of the girls at church that were his age thinking like, I wonder who he'll end up with because he's a good one. Like I thought so highly of him, but like I was just thinking like he's so much younger than me.
My estimation was correct.
Yeah.
You're
so
out of my league for sure.
Well, no, I wasn't even thinking that. The Lord just protected me from wasting my brain power of having that like started yet. Like I wasn't really trying to make anything happen, which is so great. And so then like the days we talked, I was like, great, he's so great. And the days we didn't talk, I didn't care. Like it was just, that's where I was at. And in that season, I was like thinking, okay, what was I, 29? Yeah, I obviously was thinking like, oh, I would love to get married and have a family someday. I hope that happens. So obviously I was like, that I did have a verse in that season that I wish I had memorized off the top of my head. But I just think that's important because when you have, obviously it's God's will for us to get married and multiply and have godly marriages. So even though he didn't speak to me audibly and say, I have this for you, I know that it's his will. So I stood on that promise from him and like basically in faith, like I think the verse was like, through faith and patience, inherit the promise of God. And so I was like, nope, I know you. Every time it came to my mind, I was like, yep, wait patiently for the Lord. He's got it in his perfect timing. I want his timing. I want his man. I don't want to make an Ishmael out of this. Like, wow. I don't want to control it because if I do it, like, it's not going to be as great. And it was so cool how I just let God write the love story because those 4 months, like the Bible says, in 4 months there'll be a harvest. And it was like the perfect timing, and he knew. And so it was cool when he asked me to hang out. It was so funny because we had a date, which, yes, it was a date at the time. I was like, I'll hang out with you. I mean, Tuesday's my day off. This will be fun. Like, I think he's so fun. And I didn't tell anyone on purpose because I was like, I can't tell anyone. I don't even know why.
We hung out for like 7 hours.
I know. And I was like,
Joy's missing. Has anybody heard from her? Does anybody know where she's at?
My number one girl, my number one girl in that season was Mandy. We were inseparable. And I like wish our paths are like, they still cross, but it's just like we were both single. So it was like, never could get enough of her. Still couldn't. Like, she's amazing. But I remember like trying to like not lie to her, but like didn't want to say, because I'm like, I don't want you to think anything. But we hung out a couple times, and it was so funny because on Cinco de Mayo we hung out, and I was like, I enjoy hanging out with him, but I'm not gonna say anything beyond that. Like, I enjoy hanging out with him. And then and so I was like, do you want to drive around?
So I'm still like your kind of like dirty little secret at this point.
And I said, do you want to drive around? And it's Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got distracted, and I was starting to just drive down Maple Street towards Benson, which I was like, no big deal. I know where I'm at. And all of a sudden, a car comes out of nowhere, over the median, head-on collision. And
with you guys?
Yes.
What?
And
Is
then
your first date still?
This is our third date.
Third date. Okay.
Same week, actually.
Yes, we hung out 3
week.
times in a week, so we had a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
And so then this head-on collision, and then we hit like an old lady to the right of us. And immediately, you know me, I'm just dramatic. I'm like, the car's gonna blow up. I gotta jump out the window. So immediately, I'm out the window. Like, I just jump out.
Dude, it's actually hilarious.
Was the
from
window
my perspective.
broken or down?
What's that?
Oh, our car was totaled.
Dude,
I don't
it
know
was
how I
smurfed.
squeezed out my car was smoking. That's why I thought it was gonna blow up. And
So,
I feel
pause,
so
pause,
bad because
pause.
I didn't get him.
Pause.
But
No, you don't understand. For me, I'm on the passenger seat because she's driving her car. We get absolutely, like, this guy is fishtailing out of control. We see him coming our way, and then he comes over the median, and basically we're bracing for impact.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Head-on
we saw it
collision,
coming.
Airbags. We hit the car next to us, and I'm like, what the heck? I turn to my right, because I'm in the passenger seat. There's this, our car is pinned up next to this other car, and there's an old lady in the driver's seat. And I'm like, I look through, I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I look over to Joy. Joy's literally climbing out the window, leaving me. And then I find out that you were like, well, I thought the car was going to blow up. And I'm like, you're going to leave me in a car that was going to blow up?
I wasn't. It was a lot going on at the. So
Was your door not open?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
It was-
so
it was-
smashed.
okay.
My
Yeah.
wheel was like, you know how wheels are like this on the car? It was like this. It was so bad. I don't even
Okay.
know how he hit it so hard.
Yeah, dude.
And so, I see the guy. He's so drunk, but it's Cinco de Mayo. And he comes out and he goes, did I do this? And I was like, yes, you did this. And he's like, okay.
I was livid.
By this time, Cap's out of the car.
Did
and
you
he
climb through the same window? Like, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get the visual. You had to go
I
out
had to go
that
out
way
the same
because there's a
window
car here.
because I'm pinned here. The
Yeah.
door's not open, so I had to climb out the
So
window.
he climbs out. I'm talking to the guy, convincing him like this is your fault, and he's like, "Let's just settle this between us." And I was like, I don't know.
His car is toast, like
And-
smoke coming out of it.
Yes, vodka bottle just falls out.
Well, no. Well, when the
And
vodka
then
bottle didn't fall out. Can I take it?
I
from
remember
here?
seeing it.
Okay, well, maybe it did.
Okay. Anyways, well, do you want to tell the story, or do you want me to?
Well, the next part is really where I come in, but you can you kick it off to
Yeah,
me when
yeah.
you're ready to kick it
So
off to me.
I called my parents
Put it
and
on
I
T
said,
form.
we got
Yeah.
in a car. Well, first he said, I said, we're not going to sell. I was like, I think I'm going to call someone. And so he takes off running. And then Cap, I got to see what Cap was made of that day. Because Cap, I was like, he's fast. Wow, he's strong. He pinned him to the ground. I mean, they both disappeared. I can let you take it from here. But while you're wrestling the guy, helicopters, police are coming, and you're holding him down because he was going to do a hit and run. I
is all
called my
true story.
parents and I was like, I got in a car accident. And they were like, oh, like, and they're my parents. So they're like, there's like vendor number 67, and they're like, is your car drivable? Are you okay? I was like, no, I think you need to come pick me up. And my mom was like, Joy, like they were like, you're so dramatic. And they came and my mom started crying when she saw the car because she was like, this is actually a big deal. Like it was a really
Yeah, there were
bad
police
accident.
everywhere.
The Lord protected us. But tell the story about how you tackled him.
Okay. So here's what happened in detail from my perspective. So I come out of the car. Homie G comes out and he says, did I do that? He's like holding his head like he's in shock that this happened. And there's like now there's a whole like people are gathering out of the woodwork.
Sure they are.
There's people on the side of the road. They're like looking, they're taking pictures, they're calling the cops.
Right by
And,
Taco John's, so people.
And
have
I was
it.
like, bro, you need to sit down. Like, you need to sit on the ground right now. And he was like, no, I'm fine. And he's like, bro, chill. And then there's this other kind of guy who like is like, he comes out of nowhere. He's like my little sidekick. He's like, yeah, man, you got to sit down. He's like, so he's just like, he's fired up. His testosterone is through the roof.
He's on your side.
He's on my side.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But like everything I'm saying, he's just like, he's my hype man. He's backing me up. He's like, yeah, man, like take a seat.
Do what he said.
Yeah, exactly, totally. And so then this guy, he's like, get off me. He gets back into his car and he starts shuffling around under the thing. And I was like, dude, is he gonna pull out a gun or something? Like, I just don't know what to expect. So I'm kind of on high alert. I'm watching his hands. He comes out and he's like, I don't see anything in his hands. But then he starts walking towards this line of people on the side of the road. He's just walking. And I was like, where is he going? And then he just books it. He just like starts sprinting towards the Taco John. There's a Taco John right there. And I all of a sudden it's a fight or flight moment for me. And I got like some like untied like Vans on. And I just start sprinting after him, like, stop that guy. And then the guy behind me is like, yeah, stop that guy.
You got back there. I
Dude,
love
just
it.
like, actually, he's helping me out. So I'm like, follow me. Because I didn't want to like chase this guy, him have a weapon, and then me not have anything that
Sure.
like anyone there with me. So this guy goes around the parking lot through Taco John. I tell that guy, chase that guy. I go around the side. And there's like, it's this upward hill. So he's not now climbing a fence. So I kind of get like, I'm able to beat him by a few steps because he's taking so much time to climb up this fence. So I go around. Now we're in like this residential neighborhood. Completely, you can't see the car
Okay,
scene now.
you can't see any of this, or can you?
No,
She couldn't see
they
this now.
disappeared.
Okay.
So then I was like, but this is when I knew my family was going to like him.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't care. It's going to be great.
So if I'm completely honest, while I'm chasing this guy, I'm like, this is freaking
Yeah.
awesome.
This is awesome.
Dude, like I totally got her now. Like she's gonna love me after
She's
this.
safe with me.
Yes. So like think about this. Like I'm literally living the very
Yes.
romance story
That's right.
that I wanted to tell. I'm living it right now.
On date 3.
Day 3, baby, Cinco de Mayo. So I go into this guy's neighborhood this guy's front yard. And I'm in the front yard, and then there's these 2 parked cars in the driveway, and he's climbing this fence into basically these 2 parked cars. So I know, like, oh, dude, like, I got a funnel. Like, I got you. So he's like climbing through the cars. He sees me. He tries to run past me. I tackle him, bring him to the ground, and then I'm like, he's like a wiggly guy. Like, I'm trying to like hold him down. I've got my elbow in his neck. Like, dude, stop. And I'm like, and then this guy in his underwear comes out of his house.
My goodness.
He's like, what's going on? I'm like, call the cops, call the cops. So he's calling the cops. And like, nobody can see me. So it's just like,
Where's Yaya at?
where's who?
The other guy that was following you the whole time. Yeah.
Well, remember, he went down where the parking lot was.
Okay, so he was trying to cut it
So
off
he
the other
kind of
way.
he took
Okay.
a little bit. He finally came up to kind of help me. But this guy's like, he's on the ground. He's like, let me go. And I was like, no, I'm not letting you go. And he was like, man, I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry. Like, and I'm like, bro, like, I forgive you, man. Like, we all make mistakes. And then he's like, then let me go. And I was like, no, I'm not letting you go. Like, I forgive you, but I'm not letting you go. And then finally, like, our friend from Fresh Start, Chris, the police officer, is just going on a nice little bike ride at night, and he bikes right up to us. He's like, Cap? And I'm like, Chris? And he's a cop. And I was like, he's like, well, can you explain to me what's happening here? I was like, I'll tell you everything, but like, get some of your guys here. Then there's a helicopter coming around trying to find this guy. And a couple cops pull up, and they're like about to like freak out on this guy. And I was like, yo, like, he's good. Just take him away. So they put him in cuffs. Come to find out, they searched his car. The thing that he was hiding was this empty like 5th of vodka. And it wasn't even his car. It was his girlfriend's car.
Oh, no.
That he took, and he just totally smurfed it up. So finally, I get to make my way back to her and her family.
And there's a picture.
Her dad's got like this grin on his face. Like he was.
They didn't know that you guys had been hanging out at this point?
No, I think they knew that we were hanging out.
No,
like,
because we had gone on like a date on Saturday night, and this was Tuesday.
Yeah, so, but I think what's so funny was your dad called Josh, your brother, and was like, Josh, so Joy is seeing a guy, and I think you're going to like him. And he explains this story, and then Josh tells me, he's like, as Josh is hearing this story, he's like, tell me more. Like, he's loving this. He's loving that. His sister's being taken care of. So, anywho, that was our third date.
It was like that moment I knew I could come out of the closet with.
Well, your mom posted it on Facebook.
She did. Well, and then this has happened. Mandy and I are having sleepovers every night where we don't do anything without each other. And I have kept this, like, I've squeezed in 3 hangouts without her knowing. And then I remember, like, the next day, she's like, so, do you want to address the elephant in the room?
Oh, my goodness.
She's like, what were you doing with Kat?
Because now all of Omaha
Because
knows.
everyone knows we were just in this huge car accident together, but no one knew we were hanging out. So it was just kind of funny. So then it was like, we went public with it, and we were engaged 4 months later.
What happens in the dark will always be brought out into
Yeah.
the light. Let's just take
it came out in the light.
head-on collision with cops and a fairy tale ending. That's awesome.
Yep.
So third date, and then after that, you guys, what did it look like after that for you?
So after that, it was it was really cool because I didn't say this, but when I was in that 4 months beforehand praying for her, I also was building a really meaningful friendship with her dad.
Okay.
Her actual dad. And then he invited me to go on this mission trip with Fresh Start to Botswana. And I was going to go and help minister, but also I was going to go and help video. And it's this really small crew. It was him, her dad, her, PT Denise, and then 3 other people from Fresh Start. So it's super small crew. But what was really fun was we got to go to Africa together. We sat together on this plane, and I turned to her. We were sitting together on the plane before the plane even takes off. And I was like, okay, well, if I ask her to be my girlfriend now, like, this could either be the best trip ever or the most awkward trip ever. But I was like, I'm going to take my chances. I think I got good chances here. So I turned to her and I said, so, do you want to be my girlfriend? And she said, yeah, I'll be your girlfriend. And so that began, like, literally the beginning of this mission trip to Botswana. It was like a 10-day trip. We were beginning this relationship. And it was so cool because we got to begin this relationship where we're like on the same page about what we wanted. And her dad was in the middle of everything.
Wow.
Like her dad was like, he would like at this hotel in Botswana, he would like let us go and like hang out together and get to know each other. But it felt like we were covered. Like we were covered by him. PT and Denise, our Pastor Todd and Denise were there. So we got like,
Yeah, you roomed with PT and I roomed with Denise. So it was really cool because, I mean, I don't know if you and PT talked about it at night. Probably
not much, but like just a little like guy talk, but like not like you guys were. But.
Yeah, but it was cool to be not just with Denise, but with my dad there.
But he was
It
like a
cool.
big brother to me. So for me,
Her dad.
well, no, her
PT
dad
was?
was like a dad to
Okay.
me, but PT was like a big brother to
Yeah.
me. So I felt like everything was set up for, we're going to start this right.
Yep.
It's like, it was like a very holy way of beginning this relationship, of getting to know each other. And so, yeah, we got really close really quick. And I think like even, because for me, like I wasn't trying to mess around. Like I wasn't just going to date to date. I was like, I'm dating to find my mate, my partner. And so I told her that like, hey, here's my intentions. Like if we're going to date, like I'm committed to like eventually getting married at some point if this works out. And she was like, yeah, that's what I want too. So it was just cool. Like we were able to start with like the end in mind.
Yep.
And not play any games. We knew what we knew what each other was made of. We had this period of time where we just observed each other's lives, each other's relationship with God, and we're like, let's go. So that's what began our dating journey. And then we got engaged shortly after that.
And engaged for just a few months.
We were engaged for 4 months.
Got married.
So we were married before we had even.
It was
like-
less than a year.
Yeah.
Of
So
us
our
hanging
first,
out.
so Cinco de Mayo for and then we were married the next March.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Cap, for both of you guys, 'cause I think it's one of those things, especially as this younger generation right now is starting to really understand who the Lord is and has a desire for him. The 4-month engagement window of that, like maybe talk about what did it look like for you? You just said it. Like, I knew I didn't want to mess around. That's such an easy thing to say, but oftentimes like the engagement process gets drawn out. We've got to plan this extravagant wedding. It's got to meet all of this certain criteria, and it turns into a couple months, even years in a lot of cases. I mean, goodness,
Yeah.
we were engaged for a year.
Just less than a year.
Yeah, a little bit less than a year, but
Yeah.
like more of that non-Christian or non-traditional view of like, okay, let's make it long, let's elongate it, let's make sure it's planned properly. What did it look like for you guys to say, okay, I'm not messing around, knowing I'm with the right person, and then stepping into it by faith?
Well, for me, as a believer, we have a very I don't want to say traditional. I want to say we have a holy view of sex.
Yep.
So for us, it was like sex is this gift that God gives to people that's used and enjoyed inside of the confines and the protection of a covenantal marriage.
Yep.
Covenantal relationship. You guys have probably shared this on your podcast before, but we talk about this at church all the time. Sex is like a fire, and fire that's on your couch or on the carpet or on the curtains, that is going to tear down the house and even tear down the neighborhood really quickly. But fire is good, but it's meant to be used in the fireplace, a place where it's protected,
So
it's
good.
safe. And when it's there, what does it do? It provides comfort, warmth, light.
Yep.
So it's a really beautiful gift. It's like, sometimes I think in the Christian world, we think of sex as this like taboo subject, but it's like, go read a Song of Songs.
Absolutely.
Like it's not like, it'll make you squirm a little bit, just like, whoa, like we're really going there. But that's because it's a beautiful gift that God gives. But he also knows that it's so powerful, it can give life and it can take life.
Yep.
And it must be used according to his standards because he knows what's best. And before we got married, like our whole past, like both of us, just so jacked up sexually, just so much promiscuity, multiple partners, and all the soul ties, all of the spiritual components too, because the Bible says when one man and one woman come together, they become one flesh. They become one. And so we had all these relationships where we were becoming one with many, with a ton of people. And so for us, it was like, hey, let's really put God to the test. Let's do this right. So we even made a decision, like we weren't even going to kiss on the lips until our wedding day. And, you know, that might not be everybody's conviction, but for us, it was like, no, we really want to do this right. Do this in a way where it's like we're starting from a clean
And not
slate.
saying that's the way to do it right, but
That's
we
what
were
I'm
like,
saying,
how
yeah.
pure, since we've been so impure in
Yeah.
our past, let's see how pure we can actually be
Yep.
in our engagement.
So I'd kiss her on the cheek from time to time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but like, I was like, I think as a young guy, tons of testosterone.
22.
I was like, we are not waiting. Like 4 months felt long for
Yeah.
me, but I think that was healthy because it was like, hey, like we're not going to prolong this thing. We're not going to give our flesh or the devil an opportunity to sneak in and like
Right.
get us tempted to do something before that day. Because we knew, hey, once we get on that altar and we make these vows before God and before man, we are entering into a covenantal relationship that God promises to protect.
Yep.
And if we're protected, then it's like, dude, fair game. Like
Right.
everything
Freedom.
goes. Yeah, freedom. Like the Bible says that the marriage bed is undefiled. So
Love that.
But it was
Yeah.
actually cool for me that it happened quick because I was 29. I had a lot of friends that got married young, and all my cousins and extended family were married young. So there was a part of me that was tempted to think, oh no, like I should be trying to make this happen for myself. And the Lord challenged me on that. And it was just really cool because since I decided to put my timing on the altar and just let him do it, when it came, it was quick. It was
Yeah.
like, I was like, you know, so I'm 29, I'm thinking I'm still not married and no one in sight. And then before I know it, I'm married within a year.
what's so crazy is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
So what's so crazy, because you had that experience with all of your family and all the people closest to you getting married early. For me, it was the exact opposite. It was people getting married later. And there was like this thing in my family. And by the way, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. It's
Yeah.
like no shame, no blame. But I grew up in a family where it was like, oh, we got a big family reunion this summer. Like, bring your girlfriend, bring your boyfriend. Yeah, let them sleep in the same room as you. That's normal. That was like, the idea of waiting until marriage for that was unheard of for me.
Yep.
It was prude. It was weird. But I think I had so much of it the other way that I was like, yeah, that's not satisfying. I want to put God's word to the test here. And so we did. And here's what's so crazy. Despite all the junk from our past, I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like on the altar when we got married, and by the way, our wedding was so sick because we had all these people come. We had 3 different pastors. We had her dad, we had Pastor Todd, and then we had Pastor Chet. We had this like,
Because
we were
I
like,
did the Bible college thing too.
yeah, so we had like we wanted to be this thing where it's like we want to make a spectacle of God's glory for
on.
like what He's done in our lives and our marriage. So
We couldn't decide on a pastor.
so we're like,
We
we're
had
getting all
so many-
3. We're gonna have different roles for each of them. So it was really fun.
That's
actually,
really cool.
It was super cool. But we kissed on that altar, and I'll tell you what, it was like the first kiss I ever had.
Come on.
Ever.
God redeemed it.
Yeah, and not because it was awkward. It was like I don't know what to do here.
Right.
It was like, but it was because it was so pure. It was like this person was saved for me from the beginning, and I was saved for her. And I say that because whatever anybody who's listening to this, like maybe it is a younger crowd who's like, man, like I want a story like that, but I have a jacked up past.
Yep.
Is it too late? I'm like, dude, it's not too late.
Right.
God can wipe the slate clean. He can do a miracle where you get together and it's like the first time. So
Yeah. I love
What's-
that. The way, go ahead, honey.
Well, I was just thinking what's interesting is, and I'm not really big on like symbolic or whatever. I know God is, but I just feel like you went through a 4-month discipleship program.
Mm-hmm.
You went through the same 4-month discipleship program. It's different,
it was the same thing, but different year.
different year, different
Yep.
time. You come to Omaha, God keeps you in protection for 4 months. And then you guys get engaged 4 months later. You get married 4 months,
4 months
later,
later,
and
yeah.
you guys have 4 kids right now.
Dude,
my
that's
gosh.
wild.
And it's just like God has been laying this patience and protection out for you since before you even really probably thought about it. But He was building this patience. And so to me, when I hear that, like, you knew that you had this past, and so you weren't. This is the third time actually that we've had a guest on that didn't kiss until the altar.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so for us, I remember someone telling me when they found out that I was dating Kevin, she knew about his past. I already had a 2-year-old. And so she was like, don't kiss him unless you really like him. And then I was like, well, I like him, so I'm kissing him. I had no boundary, and then we just did everything wrong.
But you waited a while.
Right away.
I remember hearing that story and I was like, oh, I'll prove that person wrong. I'm gonna win this one.
Yeah.
So I'm going
But-
for it.
I feel that, bro, for sure.
But I love how God had protected you guys and had these amazing people in your life and to speak truth, but then even let you have a little freedom. Like your dad gave you freedom when you guys were in Botswana and you guys made the right choice. Like it's not like you guys had all these rules. You made a choice. So
Yeah.
God had been preparing you, giving you
that's
this
a good
endurance
point.
and patience, but then you were like, okay, I've spent time with the Lord, and so I know I can do this. I can wait.
I want to dig into
crazy.
the number 4. I didn't make that
No,
connection. till you
we've
said
had,
that.
now that she said that, I was like, you've had dreams with 4. We won't go into that. We'll stay on the marriage topic.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we'll talk later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for saying
it
that,
just
though.
keeps
That's
coming
deep.
up. But
Maybe episode 2 because I love those types of conversations.
well, I know because you guys are so gifted.
Yeah.
Ooh,
and
part 2. Yeah, we could do a part
Yeah.
2.
These
So-
are our dream people, and we have crazy dreams. We reach out to Cap and Joy to figure out what's going on in our
so good.
subconscious
good.
world.
Yes.
I don't want to steal what you were going to say.
I was just going to bring up the point of like the way that you describe that, and for anybody else that's in that kind of season of like, man, I've done so much wrong. I always just think about it like you're putting clean fuel back into the car. You can run a car with dirty fuel for a while, but at some point it's going to start to slow down.
Yep.
And then you put that Jesus fuel in there, just that fresh dose of super pure, just high ethanol gas, and it just explodes it.
Premium.
Totally redemptive. Yeah, premium. It's like the most elite fuel you can put in your body.
I love that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you guys went through that season. All right. So then you get married.
Yep.
3 pastors show
Yes.
up for that thing. You guys finally get to engage with one another physically. We won't go into the details of that, but what an awesome privilege to be able to really honor the Lord with that, man.
Yeah, that was cool.
Super proud of you guys for waiting for that, walking through that season. There's a lot of people that wish they would have done it right, man. Like that's the thing. I think anybody that's on this side of it is like, man, I wish I would have done that right. But you can start now. It
You
doesn't
can
mean
start
that you
now, man. God can write a new story.
Exactly, man. Put the past behind you, put that stake in the ground and say, we're going to do this right moving forward. For you guys, what did it look like then as you go through this marriage in the same house for the first time where so many other people have test drove the car before, they've lived together. Now you're bringing 2 people into a house together for the first time, learning how to be married. What did that look like for you guys?
Do you want to start? How do you feel?
I'll go off what you say.
I thought it was super fun. I mean, by the grace of God, we got our own place right away. I think what was interesting was there's all these little expectations that you don't think you need to communicate that all of a sudden get exposed when you're in the same house together. Like, it's one thing when you're dating and it's like, okay, you go back to your house, I go back to my house. Here's how I do things at my house. You do things the way you do at your house. But then we get in the situation where it's like all of these little micro expectations of like, what do you mean you keep the paper towels on the counter? Like, those belong under the sink. Like, are you crazy? It's just like all these little things that we then had to begin working through. And we also were, we had different work schedules. So there's this other component too of like finding the right time to actually meaningfully connect with each other, not just sexually, but also emotionally and relationally and just date nights and things like that. But what's interesting, we were just talking about this on the way here. Like, we had our first year of marriage was not like some people say it's a train wreck. I wouldn't say it was a train wreck, but we also had some very like energetic arguments a lot. It seemed like every day we had Tuesday was like our mutual day off.
I would be like, we fight every Tuesday.
It was like Tuesday was our
'Cause we're
day to
together.
like, we were finally together and then we fought and we just got in like an argument. And it was never like, we're going to like, not be committed to each other, but it got emotional. Sure. And I don't really know why it did. But
I don't either. It's probably my fault. I don't know.
I think 2 can tango, but like, I think we didn't really know how to fight fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, I think that's one thing that we've learned over time is like, hey, like, we're in a heated argument. but that doesn't mean like this is gonna fall apart. It doesn't mean that I'm not on your team. But let's let the sparks fly together and let's resolve this well. That let's not use certain vocabulary.
Okay.
Let's not use
So you're getting into kind of really practical things that you guys had to establish
over time. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
was over time.
I'm really grateful. Like we had a great community around us. Pastor Todd and Denise were they kind of walked with us for the first year of marriage, grabbing breakfast together. But there were some things that we had to learn practically of we had to remove the word divorce from our vocabulary.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's just throw you under the bus, babe, but
I know. I'd be like, well, just go,
you would say things that you didn't mean it, but you were trying to trigger some sort of emotional response from me because you wanted to know that I cared. My default when things were falling apart was I'm just going to check out.
Okay.
So we could probably go there.
Yeah.
Does everyone have the same marriage?
Everybody has this. Everybody, including us, right? Usually there is the one that's going to start to say things, use words as a weapon. Oftentimes that is the woman in a relationship because they defensive.
Because we're more wordy.
Yeah, more worried, a lot more thoughts going on in their mind. Like we say it this way, men have brains like waffles, women have brains like spaghetti. We're very compartmentalized. Both are great. And
so good.
We jack that from maybe Love and Respect.
I think
or
Love and
something like
Respect,
that.
yeah.
Waffles and spaghetti.
Yeah, both are good.
Especially Joy
Both
and
are
I.
great.
Both are great.
Yeah.
I could actually go for both right now.
Exactly. I
honestly.
say that all the time. I'm like, that's why it's so good because imagine putting spaghetti on a waffle. I think that would be really good.
Chicken and waffles works.
Bro, come on. I'm getting hungry.
Little
just thinking about it.
savory, sweet.
But very compartmentalized in what we do. Women have all of the thoughts. It's not that they're thinking about things more than men are, but I think those thoughts ruminate
more integration with all those things.
It's why women can sit there and have this amazing conversation about, oh my gosh, Joy, your shoes look so good in that jacket. And then all of a sudden, and we're going to go to France. And then, what's Sally up to? Have you met her new daughter? And it's whoa.
The name Sally always gets brought in.
It's just what just happened? You're like, yeah, I'm going to go watch Sports Center or something cool. So it's really hard. It's different. It's different types of communication.
So true.
All of that to say, typically there is one person that's going to be a little bit more aggressive, and the other one that when a fight starts to break out, they're going to get past and be like, "Yo, I don't want to do this."
Yeah.
But every marriage is faced with that, and for Kappas, for you to sit here and say okay, the word divorce was thrown around, or potentially fine, leave, just do what everybody else has ever done in my life, walk away.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you guys to practically walk through that and have that conversation of these are some of the non-negotiables and then get alignment on that?
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, she, by the way, she is a very consistent person. She lives up to her name. So she has a reputation of being joyful and not being moved very easily. And so I want to credit you with that. That's really who you are. But when we get in these fights, she'd go from 0 to 100 super fast. And I was like, yo, you're being real hyper right now. And for me and my upbringing, I would say one of the things that was a pattern in my family, not all the time, but there was a pattern of stuffing your feelings, being kind of passive aggressive or passive emotional. And so not getting to the root of things. And so I grew up in an environment where it was hey, I'm just, you guys got that thing, the issue going on, I'm going to go to my room. I don't want to deal with that. And that wasn't healthy. So for me, I'm not saying the way I handled it was healthy, but
And my parents were
it was a
marriage
learned behavior.
counselors and did communication workshops every weekend.
So she grew up in an environment where it was let's communicate well and all this sort of stuff. But she got so hyper sometimes. I was like, yo, I'm not communicating with that version of you. And so she felt like I was shutting down. I was withdrawing. So she knew healthy confrontation means you love somebody.
Okay.
It means you're committed to the relationship. I felt hey, what you're doing is communicating that you're attacking me.
Yep.
And I don't want to blow up on you. So I'm pulling away because, and maybe you've related with this personally, but I know if I get to the level that you're at right now, someone could get hurt and I do not want to go there. So I'm trying to calm myself down by retreating. And so that's where she'll throw around a phrase like that about maybe we should get a divorce, not because she wants to, but she's trying to get me emotionally to respond.
Bring me to where you're at.
Exactly. And then that's where something would go totally haywire. We start yelling at each other. And then finally, we got leave. Somehow we get to this place of like, ultimately it ended with somebody had to be the spiritually mature
Yep.
person to say, I will humble myself, tell you that I was wrong in this area, but I'm also going to tell you like what you did made me feel this way. And I'm asking like, if we're going to be healthy together, so we got to both own this, but it's got to take one person that's willing to reverse the crazy cycle.
Yeah.
Ding. I mean, that's it right there.
That's it. And that, I mean, dude, that sucks.
Bro, it's so
It
hard.
hurt. But that's where like, I remember one of the consistent, and maybe this is like common Christianese phrasing
Yeah.
for your upbringing. I never heard this phrase growing up. So when people said this to me, it was like, it was a massive mic drop. When we got married, we got all these letters from people, all these encouragements. One of the consistent encouragements that we got from people was, first one to the cross wins. So if you're going to play any game in marriage, that's the game to play. First one to the cross wins, which is like,
First one to, humble themselves.
first one to humble themselves, crucify their own desires, their own expectations. So the act of humbling yourself, it feels like an emotional crucifixion. Like, here I am laying down myself, laying down my preferences, laying down my right to be right, so that we can become one again.
Love it.
Oh, dude, it's
amazing.
brutal.
It's brutal and it's so worth it. And
It's so worth it,
It's a
man.
skill. You've got to practice it, and you're going to get it wrong at times. And what we always encourage people with is continue to do it.
So-
Continue
Yeah.
to do it.
I want to share a recent win because that's how it was before. And I think over time, probably through some of the health challenges and the business challenges, which we're free to talk about too.
Yep.
But we're at this place now where I feel like I can't remember the last time we ever fought like that.
Yeah.
We get in disagreements. We can pull each other aside and be like, hey, like, you kind of like said something that really made me feel this way. We can resolve it pretty quickly. But
Just like that.
But recently we had a situation that could have, if we had the same argument 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it would have blown up in our faces. But you handled it extremely well. So if you want to share about the recent win, and make sure you talk in the microphone.
Okay, yeah. The recent when I was actually just thinking about, remember our fight when
This is going to be.
Oh, here we go.
no, we moved into our house 2 years ago, and you just buy a new house and you have to furnish it. And some people can do all that in one day. Some people have to do that over a period of time. And he had a priority of the window treatments, and that wasn't my priority. And he felt like he was living in like a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And everyone was, like watching us. I'm like, no one cares. No one's watching you walk across the kitchen. It doesn't matter. We're going to buy this piece of art. And so anyways, it was like,
I'm trying to be a protector of the home.
we had a certain amount of money we could spend a month, and I wasn't going to spend that on curtains, and I wasn't going to put curtains in our living room. They're going to be blinds, and they're going to be a certain type of blinds, right? And we didn't have the money that month, so we were going to live in a glass house. That's what we were going to do. Anyways, it was hilarious because we were like wrestling on the floor at one point. We were so mad.
We were wrestling?
Yeah, we were mad. We didn't like get physical, but we were like, no, do you remember? We were yelling at each other. Anyways.
Oh, actually, no, I do. Was it out in the basement?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you were
do
just
remember.
like, you were like, stop. Like, boom.
Yeah,
Like,
I had
it
to-
wasn't like.
I wasn't hitting her. I was restraining her. she's a tiny girl, so she was getting a little physical, and it wasn't making a big dent on me. But I was like, we gotta
dial this back.
We gotta hold you down because we're going a little crazy right now. It's getting a little Jerry Springer in our house.
I love that. Dude.
We had moments, bro, where she in our old house when she'd get mad at me, she would yell at me. She would storm out, slam the door. But I'm sitting there like, oh, finally some peace and quiet. And then she storms back in. She runs in. She takes the garbage can, dumps out the garbage can in the kitchen, throws the garbage can, then storms back out. I was like, all right, back to peace and quiet.
That was our fight. We watched Marie Kondo, and that was like our biggest fight of our marriage because you were like wanting to do it, and I was like, no. I had just had a baby, and I was so overwhelmed. And you were wanted me to be Marie Kondo.
Yeah,
and
you
I
want to
was
organize
like,
the house, organize this. And then she dumps
yeah,
out
I
the
dumped
trash.
trash.
So yeah, we're not perfect, guys.
No, I love it, dude. It's the view inside. Well, it's a glass house, so it's
Well,
like
that's not the old house.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, I
Yeah,
just
so anyway, we had some
I
wild
didn't want
arguments,
to.
but-
Yeah, so after that, we can tell you our win. But
Yeah, we just want you to know we're totally human.
Yep.
And like, but it was like, we had to learn. We had to learn how to believe in the best. And learn how like to not have vain imagination of like, well, they communicated this. This is what they must have meant. It's like, no, I didn't mean that at all. What are you talking about? We had to learn how to forgive consistently, because if you don't practice forgiving consistently, then you start to filter things through like, well, they always do this and they never do that. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I've changed. I repented. I grew. And so, anywho, like, let's give an example
so
of a
I'm gonna be
huge
super
win.
vague because
We don't want to protect the people, but
yeah, you know, if you're listening to this, it's not you. But anyways, we had a situation where, which obviously there's many of these situations, but the wife was confiding in me that she really wants her husband. She was really trying to set up the blind date with Cap to hopefully convert her husband.
Okay.
And I obviously have a heart for it too. And so like I'm like, okay. And Cap wasn't really making his room in his schedule for it. And I took that as, you think you're too good for this guy. You might actually like him. Like, you never know.
yeah,
And
go deep into what you were thinking.
I was like, I didn't say any of this, but I'm like, hey, this so-and-so's married. This is what's going on. And like, so, maybe sometime on a Friday and like, maybe we could go do this and then you and him could go do this. And like, I'm like throwing out all of these like scenarios. And honestly, I'm having a little pressure from this wife who's just desperate for her husband to have some sort of community. And so I'm emotionally wrapped up with how she feels. And I want this to be this great story as well. So I pitch him all these ideas of like how this could work, where he's just going to get slain in the spirit, radically saved, and come to Jesus, and their marriage is going to thrive. They're probably going to have 5 more kids. It's going to be amazing. So like, that's where I'm coming from with like, Cap's going to save the day, because she also thinks Cap's going to save the day. Right. And so I am like, what are you doing this day? Do you think this would, and he's just not making room in his schedule. And so I just take a step back and I just leave it alone. And I'm like,
so let me just say, I was willing, but I was definitely hesitant, and I wasn't jumping on it.
You were willing, but you didn't really make room for it.
I wasn't excited about
And
it.
so I'm like, he thinks he's too good for this guy. He's too busy. He doesn't make, what about the lost sheep? Come on. Like, and so I'm having all these like vain imaginations about why he's just not jumping at the chance to help this guy out that he has no communication with. And so I left it alone until I like could gather myself and actually pray about it. And I was like, Lord, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. And I don't know what to do. And the Lord gave me perspective on the situation. And then since I never got to hear his heart behind my ideas, I knew I had to close the circle. So what I did is, and I was like, give me wisdom with the girl too, because I also care about how she probably is like, I reached out to one person and no one cares about us. And it's like, I care about her. I care about him. I care about all this, but this is your thing, not mine. So I, came to him. I think you had just preached. I don't even know if this is the timing, but it was after. I waited till after he preached. I wasn't gonna talk about this the week he preached, and then I was like, okay, so I think he already preached, he has no like obligations today. That this is a good time. You were eating. See,
I was
like,
gonna
learned
say
all this from
fed him.
PT and Denise. And you know, I'm a great wife, and we have the rotation. So he was met in all his needs. So, anyways,
Rotation? Oh, we had sex?
well, you were probably fine.
Yeah.
Took
in
care of
that
the
area.
hungry and horny.
She,
So,
she
like,
took care of all,
Yeah, yeah.
all
Because
my
this
primal
was gonna,
needs.
Right.
because I was actually worried when I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to
Very
accuse him.
strategic.
Yes.
But I
Very
really
Esther-like.
like this is
Yeah.
how I feel, because this has come up multiple times, and the mandate was not happening and not looking like it was ever going to happen. And so I said, "Hey, this topic. This is how I feel. I believe that there's another side to the story, but do you want to know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that you think you're too good for him. You don't care about him. And now that you're good in your life, you're not like making any room for ministry and blah, blah, blah." And you gave me a perspective.
I want to qualify. Like, you were so careful about saying, like, I know you're busy. I'm sure there's another side of the story, but this is how it is coming across.
Yep.
So she
Yeah.
wasn't accusing me, but she was giving me insight into her world.
Her perspective.
Yep. And I felt so respected and so really cared for. So I didn't feel like she was accusing me at all, but it made it very, very welcoming and inviting for me to engage in that conversation.
And a lot of that just so everybody knows, like your tone, the way
Yep.
the situational awareness of when to have that conversation. Because I
Yeah.
think even in our anger, we're
Yeah.
wanting the other person to hear that, but we've got to really take that inward perspective to say, man, what do I need to do to get right so that I can have this conversation in a way that the other person's going to hear it?
Right.
So my mom was actually there, like in the background. And when she heard what I was bringing up, she goes, "I'm going to leave," because she's been around when it's gotten volatile before. And she knew that I was having like maybe a hard conversation. And I did say, "Okay, Cap, I'm really scared about how this conversation's going to go." And he's like, "Oh gosh, me too. I mean, what are you going to say?"
But that's a good phrase.
It is.
But I said, "I just want you to know that my goal is to not fight about this, but I have to bring this up and close the circle." So anyways, Cap had a mic drop moment. He's like, "Joy, the guy doesn't want help. He never, like, the minute this guy reaches out to me, I'm there. But you're setting me up on this mandate that could be a complete waste of my time because he isn't repentant. He doesn't want change. He doesn't want to get right with the Lord. And so you're going to make me clear like a day or an hour or whatever, you know, like to hang out with these people when it's going to be like a waste of my time
Yeah.
if he's not, like, you guys are just hoping that him being around me is going to change
Yeah.
something. If he reached out to me or made time for me, like maybe, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that because of course
Yeah.
Cap's ministering to people all the time. And I was just looking at this one guy that needs help, but it was just really cool. So that's why we don't fight anymore, really. I mean,
Well, it was. I think what's so cool about what you said too is that these are practical skills.
Yep.
This isn't
Yeah.
something that's like, it might come more naturally to one than another, but it's like these are things that you can grow in. You can, like, some of the things that she said. Number one, she slowed down and she prayed. So
Yeah.
really getting God's heart
100%.
first and like asking God for wisdom. So she did that. Number two, she looked in the mirror and she said, "What are the things that I can do to serve my husband so that he knows that I'm like really for him? Fed, sex, bring food and come naked sort of thing," right?
Yep.
Those things matter. Encouraging me after I preached, is the timing was great. But even those phrases like, I'm afraid of this turning into a fight. That's a really powerful phrase because what it communicates is that you don't want to fight.
Right.
And you're considering how the other person might take it. Even the things that you're saying about like help me understand, show me the other side of this. It wasn't about accusation of like, you did this and this is what you meant. You weren't accusing me. You were inviting me into your world, and then you gave me an opportunity to share. So I felt like and before I even shared my side of it, the first thing I said to her was, "You handled that perfectly."
Yep.
Because now I absolutely want to engage in this conversation, and it was a pretty pretty quick conversation after that. Once we got on the same page, it was like, the issue wasn't the issue. It was a communication gap. And I think that's what happens in most times in conflicts.
It is. It's
it is. Sorry. So, gosh, so much with just this right here, because one, you have an opportunity, Joy, in your waiting. You're not seeing what your husband, you're not seeing the fruit of what you want your husband to do. You're trying to control. You're trying to make it all happen. And it was a good intention, but you are going down a path that is like getting angry, taking up an offense, and getting mad. Now this other couple's issue is becoming potentially, you haven't even discussed it, but an issue between you. And so now you're like, okay, wait a minute. This doesn't come naturally to all women. And I would say for you, you've already talked about being excitable and full of joy and energy for your natural tendencies. You're showing so much restraint and maturity, saying, okay, God, yes, I'm going to get with you. There has to be something else. And really you're showing, okay, it's not my timing, God, it's yours. It's not my will. Yes, it's obviously my husband's, that like we're on the same page. We want redemption for this couple or this couple, whoever it is. God, why isn't it happening? And you're showing restraint and saying, okay, God, show me, help me. I'm going to pray for this situation. And then just having that patience and saying, okay, I'm going to just disarm the conversation before we even get started. I want to honor my husband, even though I'm kind of mad. Like, I feel like he's not doing anything.
Yep.
But I can only be responsible for how I respond. And you set that up perfectly for him to come to you and say, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you crushed that.
Because you're right. It's not like I got with the Lord and I had the perspective yet. I was still kind of like irritated that he wasn't going after the lost sheep and restoring this guy to the faith, which is in the Bible to do. And I'm like, you call yourself a minister? You just got off the stage, but you don't care about this guy. And it's like, that's really how I felt.
Yeah.
And so I had to really be like, there's got to be an explanation for the way you're acting. So
good.
I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Please share with me what's going through your mind when I'm telling you how this guy is in trouble. And then I was like, I never thought about that. Yeah, he doesn't want help. Oh my gosh. His wife wants help, not him.
Yes.
So,
Satan is such a liar because look what he does. He has the same tricks. He's trying to get you, who loves your husband, is attracted to your husband, honors your husband, and he's attacking in your mind. Like Satan is trying, I see it as trying to attack your husband's character. You call yourself a pastor, you're a hypocrite. You know, you have all this success now. You don't even care about our friends. Like, he's already formulating these things. I hate him. I hate Satan.
He's a dork.
He's terrible.
I would love to move this into the conversation about the success.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take 5 really quick. So we were talking about the success that you guys have experienced over these last few years. We took a quick break, though, and we went to go get a quick snack, use the restroom, and then Cap and I saw 2 turkeys on the fence. What'd we do?
We tried to shoot them with the new little pellet gun you got your son.
We got the pellet gun out.
Dude, that thing was sick. But those turkeys are a little quicker than we thought.
By the time we got up there, we saw them from where we were recording at. We got upstairs, got the gun loaded.
You got up to 10 feet close to those things.
Yeah, and it was gone. It hid behind the ditch. So we didn't get a chance to take a turkey out in the middle of this, but
maybe in part 2.
Yeah, part 2. Maybe at the end of it they'll be back. So we had 3 squirrels and 2 turkeys to pick from, and we've walked in with no game.
If we get it, please promise that you will include the picture of the turkey in the thumbnail of this episode.
We'll do it.
If we get it.
Okay, if we get one after this. You guys have had some crazy success over these last few years. But before that, I want to talk briefly about just the health scenarios that you guys were going through as a married couple. So
sure.
Fast forwarding a few years married, we're leaving out the part about 4 kids that are amazing. There's a little bit of overlap in there as well. But Joy experienced some tremendous health issues at the same time you were experiencing a lot of challenges within your business.
Yep.
What did that look like for you guys as a married couple to navigate that?
So the story goes, it actually, if I can pull it back, as a pastor, I also felt this invitation from God to start my own business.
That's right.
So I started my own digital media agency and was going to go, I really sensed this call to go full time with it in 2019. And so I do that. I get this massive like confirmation that was what God was inviting me into. And transparently, it wasn't something that I really invited her into for the decision of. I just said, this is what this is what I'm called to do. We're going to do it. It's going to be great, etc.
Wow.
And she was a really good sport about it, but I found out later, like really hurt by how I handled that, because she didn't feel like she had any say in that process.
Well, it's not that I really cared that I like didn't have a peace about it, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it wasn't of the Lord, but I didn't feel good about that decision at all, and I didn't feel like I was able to say. I don't want to be one of those feminists that have to have a word in every decision their husbands do in their career. That's not me. Actually, I don't care a lot of things, but I really didn't have a peace about you making that step. And I probably, if I would have had more time, come to it. But I just want to say.
No, I'm glad you clarified that, because you do let me like lead and make it very easy for me. But that was a big decision, and she wasn't really involved in the conversation, and she would have had something to bring to it.
So really changing professions.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, not
completely.
Yeah.
Like going all in on a business you just start is like not a simple thing to do. And then a couple years later, 2022, I was, for a handful of years, I was trying to build that business and just like building it on a promise that God was going to bless it. And it just was not going anywhere. And it was really frustrating. And so I think for her, she's kind of like, she's probably thinking in the background, like, I knew this was not the best idea. Like I had a check about it and here we are. But she also she wasn't like constantly reminding me of like, you're an idiot, but
you did it again.
Yeah, but I felt like, oh man, like, yeah, we didn't go into this new chapter the best way. So then in 2022, the business really started falling apart, and we had hired some new employees based off of some client contracts that we had just signed, and then the clients backed out. And so now I'm in this place where we have people who are now working for us who have moved their entire lives around to work with me, and I feel responsible. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll sell our way out of this problem. We just got to get a couple new deals, and then we're going to be good to go. So a few months go by, nothing closes. I'm like, okay, well, we'll take on a little bit of debt. We'll just, keep payroll going, then we'll be good. Couple more months go by, still nothing's happened. So now we're climbing into debt and trying to keep these people employed. And then simultaneously, I get a text. This was like was it May? That I got that text from you?
No, it was the day after Easter.
Oh yeah, it was after Easter.
I remember I was at Easter Sunday church, and I was like, I should maybe take a probiotic or something. I feel horrible.
If I'm not mistaken, though, I think Easter was at the end of April that year. So I think it was right at the beginning of May, if I'm not mistaken. But anyhow, I get this text, and Joy texts me and says, hey, I'm headed to the ER. Please meet me there. So, or she didn't even say, please meet me there. She said, hey, I'm headed to the ER. So I was like, oh, shoot. So I stop whatever I'm doing. I just meet her at the ER, like, which hospital you're at. So I go there. She lays down the story for me, and she was like, hey, I felt really like off after a workout, and I felt like I needed to take my blood sugar test. So she took her blood sugar test, and she found out her blood sugars were in the 400s, which for anybody listening, if you have anybody in your family who's diabetic, you know that you want to hover around 80. So that's like kind of a homeostasis level. So she was so far beyond that she was going to potentially go into organ failure at any moment. And this was kind of news for us. She had gestational diabetes during our third pregnancy, so that's why she even had a glucometer. But we thought it was done. It wasn't an issue. So we go to the ER. Doctor tells her, you're a type 1 diabetic. It was an absolute disaster. They didn't even give her insulin there.
No, they said go on the website and find an endocrinologist.
It was such a nightmare. Yeah, it was so the incompetency, the negligence, and then just the lack of care. It was like, oh yeah, you're a type 1 diabetic now, like good luck. And then here's some other autoimmune diseases on top of that you're going to have to work through. Oh, you don't have health insurance because you're a struggling entrepreneur? Well, you're going to have to pay for this out of pocket. So then it was like paying for medical treatments, trying to get more lab testing done of all these. She had like all this autoimmune disease stuff going on, and then paying for all the insulin. So we're paying for everything out of pocket, and we're already living paycheck to paycheck.
Right. Got a business over here that you're trying
Well,
to
I
keep
didn't
afloat.
take
Yeah.
insulin for a while because it was like $200. So I was like, oh, I'll just not eat any.
Yeah, man, it was a mess. it was an absolute nightmare. And then
So what was it like, Cap, as she's going through this, for you to like still come alongside her, support her, work with her, try to make the best decisions?
well, that was like, it was basically like a new child in the family. It was kind of what it felt like, was here's a whole other set of responsibilities we have to work through, whole new level of appointments we have to go to weekly. We can't afford it. Well, we got to pay for it. We'll swipe the credit card. So it was like, for me as the primary provider of the family, it was very stressful financially. Because like we're getting crushed financially, personally. My business is not working at all. And I was very frustrated by the whole thing. I was really mad at God, honestly.
Okay.
And I had this moment where I was like in my office, and I was on my face, and I just said, God, what gives? Like, is this how you treat your servants? Here I am. You would have thought, wow, he must have done something really bad. But you know, I was faithful to my wife. I was trying to take care of her. I was trying to lead my business in a godly way, praying before business meetings, being as generous as we could be with our finances. And I was just like, what gives here, God? Like, is this how you treat your kids that are trying to do things for you and honor you? And basically he like really humbled me and showed me like the whole vision of my agency that he gave me, that he put in my heart to build, was to tell his stories through video. And I got so focused on going and winning, you know, clients and contracts with people from the world and the secular marketplace, so that I could eventually do the thing that God was telling me to do. And he was like, dude, like Matthew 6:33, what does it say? It says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. And he was like, you had it backwards. You were seeking first all of these things, getting all of your business things in order, so that eventually the kingdom could be added unto you. And he was like, I can't bless your version of my vision.
Right priorities,
Dang.
wrong order.
Yeah, he said, I gave you a specific vision for your business. You put your own version on it. And what's interesting is I'm sure there's probably a tie there for you, and even the healing journey that you've been going on is like taking a promise from God, adding our own spin to it, and then feeling like he's obligated to bless that.
Wow.
That's why he said, I'm not obligated to bless your version of my vision, but I'm going to give you another chance. And so he gave me another chance. And I started this past January of 2023. I just knew he was saying, Cap, I want you to be a content creator for me. Like, you can't get anybody else to pay you to do work for them, but what if I was your only client?
I'm going to back you up. I'm going to pause you for 1 second.
Yep.
I really want to know this because I think it's really important. A lot of people go through health journeys. How did you support Joy mentally through that process?
Well, I want to tell it.
Yeah,
go for it.
And then I want to pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
So-
Go for it.
You went Kamala on me. You dodged the question.
Oh, no.
I wasn't trying to dodge it.
I know you weren't.
I was in
Okay.
the heat of the story, but
So when I was diagnosed, I went straight to the Lord. Oh, sorry. At first. And I felt like I got a word from the Lord. It was clear, nearly audible. Deuteronomy 8 says, I led you all this way into the wilderness to test you, to try you, to see what's in your heart, whether you would obey my commandments. You walked through the wilderness. Your clothes didn't wear out. Your foot didn't swell. Blah, blah, blah. I met your every need. Then I'm taking you into a land of milk, honey, pomegranates, figs, blah, 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 blah.
Come on.
So he gave me that scripture in my moment of what gives. I didn't say that, but like I'm like, I can't eat. I can't live. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I'm not even, can't even take medicine. So that's really miserable. And my body was like, insulin's a growth hormone. My body was wasting away, and I felt it. It was like the worst feeling.
yeah, you got really skinny.
So I sought him, and then I just really didn't feel like, I don't know what I thought, but again, it was my version of like, this happened, you're going to save the day because you're God. And then I'm going to go back to living my life because you're God, you should heal me. And it was just like, wait, what's going on? Like I felt so like I should probably get with him and unpack more, but the same as him. I felt the same as him. So it went from that word from the Lord to immediately this. I'm just going to read 5 verses, and this is the way I was living. It's Isaiah 30. It says, "What sorrow awaits my rebellious children? You make plans that are contrary to mine. You make alliances not directed by my spirit, piling up your sins. Without consulting me, you went down to Egypt for help. You put your trust in Pharaoh's protection. You tried to hide in his shade. By trusting Pharaoh, you will be humiliated, and by depending on him, you'll be disgraced. For though his power extends to Zion and his officials have arrived in somewhere else, all who trust in him will be ashamed, and he will not help you. Instead, he will disgrace you." And so for 2 years, I sought every doctor, every supplement, every health podcast. And it was so funny because I would be like cooking in the kitchen, and I felt like the Lord said, "You never even asked me." Like, I'm listening to a health podcast, trying to do every single thing, like getting ear doctors everywhere, getting home harmonizers to block the EMFs, like literally spending all this money we didn't have to try to get my body in this perfect place to heal. And nothing moved my diabetes, and nothing moved anything. It was probably great. My kids are probably really healthy, but that was it. And so I'd be like cooking and listening to another, just gathering all this information about health. And then he would interrupt my thoughts and say, "You don't even ask me to heal you." And I'm like, "And I'm not going to, because you won't." Like, that's where my heart was. And then I remember doing something else. He's so good because he's like pursues. I'm not even seeking him. And I heard, "Healed by my testimony." Healed by your testimony, or something like that, which is a psalm, which I didn't even know, wasn't even reading that. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I should look up people healing testimonies on the internet and get hope. Didn't do that. Like, literally did not listen to the Lord in the midst of it. So this lasted for 2 years, where I'm just like, I'm gonna heal myself because you won't. So that's where I was living. And it was like such a darkest night of the soul, because you're separated from God and you won't get healing because he's healer. So then you had like kind of a revelation in the midst of my healing journey that God is healer and he's good, and you were like starting to come around. And I just want to say, like, he was so supportive, so patient. Like, obviously doesn't let me buy everything, like, but he's still like, I'm like, if you don't give me this infrared sauna, I might die. Okay, he bought it. Like, we didn't have the money. Like, all of the things, like, he really supported me. But at the same time, he held a standard in our home that you wouldn't let me blaspheme the Lord when I was like, he's not going to do this. You're like, no, you're not going to speak that out of your mouth. You're going to say that he is good, and you're going to confess what's true, and that you are healed in the heavenly reality, and it will manifest if you keep speaking, because the lips of the wise preserve them. So we preserve in the word, like the word of God is perfect. It converts our soul. Our soul is what's sick. And if we want to convert our soul, we speak the word. Like, you would say all these things, and they were like just one ear and out the other. Like, they never sunk into me. I was just like, thanks, Cap. He would pray for me. I don't know, you were just so patient until I had that revelation, and you didn't beat me over the head with the Bible. And so finally I got there, and I've like repented of my idolatry and all of that. But you were so good. Like, I just can't thank you enough, because I felt like he really cared, and for me, but also like you would call me up higher daily. And I'm sure it was so exhausting, because I was never changing and I was never hearing it. I was like, no, I know God's good, but it's like I had such a wall between me and God, because I wasn't seeking him for the very thing that I was upset about, which is because I didn't believe that he would. And you told me all the time, repent, repent, repent. And I would tell my friends, like, if my husband told me to repent, like, I was like, I know every day Cap tells me to repent.
What it's like to live with the prophet.
Yeah, but I'd be like, I don't think God's gonna repent of unbelief right now. And he would make me do it. And I don't know what I would do without you.
I wouldn't bark at you. Like, I would say it like,
woman, repent.
Yeah. But it was a challenge of like, change your mindset on this, because And I don't think you probably would have received me saying that if I wasn't caring for you in the process. Probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is pastor over heart,
Yeah.
protector over mind, and provider of stability through that season.
Yeah, it was hard though, man. It was challenging. I felt like, honestly, for a lot of it, I didn't even allow myself to like feel. I think that's one thing that's interesting about how God has wired men is like, you talk about the waffle versus the spaghetti. And I think that's actually partly really good, because in certain like emergency situations, you got to have someone who's able to shut off like, hey, I'll get to how I feel later. We got a job to do. We were living in survival mode for a while. And then, you know, even with our newest baby, it was kind of the same thing, which Charlie, our fourth kiddo, she was born with an interesting condition where the plates in her skull were fused together when she was born, which is not how it's supposed to be. So she needed basically emergency neurosurgery at 6 weeks. And so what was supposed to be like this really joyous celebration of new life became another point of stress. And so it was like, there's just like, we've had a history of these things happen. And in the midst of it, I think God's just given me this grace of like, really like, he'll take care of me. My job is to take care of her.
Yep.
If I can focus on taking care of her, he'll take care of me.
Yep.
And he really sustained me really well through that. And so, but I had to really die to myself. I think one thing that was really a challenge too was like, her dad is, you know, he passed away. He's with Jesus now, but literally the most like closest to Jesus person I've ever met. So kind, always smiling. You never doubted his love for you ever. And she lived with that. And he was always like caring and compassionate and taking an interest and like kind of mushy gushy with her.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't think I'm like that. And so she would sometimes in like weak moments compare me to him. And I was like, I'm sorry, like I'm not him. But I think the Lord had to grow me into this whole other level of caring for her heart, not just being a problem solver, but like, we'll solve the problem. Let me care for your heart. Let me be a safe place for you to process your emotion about this. But then let me not leave you in your emotion. Like, let's go to truth. You know what I mean? So she didn't, that's why I feel like I was able to say hard things about, hey, let's turn from that way of thinking. Let's stop speaking that, because God was growing me in first listening and caring and allowing you to just cry about your situation, our situation.
So much easier to accept.
Oh my gosh, so
critique
much here.
when you know the person is a coach and they come from a position of care.
Yeah.
It opens the door. It's an invitation then to hearing what that person has to offer.
Sure.
And you were able to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because it's almost like Jesus. Like, so often we want, like, religion tells us it's all the rules. And so that's what essentially a lot of people grow up with, and it turns them away from the Lord. And then you realize, no, Jesus is pursuing me. He's showing me that there is relationship too. And when there's relationship, whether it's parenting or in marriage, you're more acceptable of like the rules, because you know that this person's caring for you. They have a heart for you. They're going to weep with you. That's what Jesus does. It says in scripture, you know, he weeps. His heart's broken when we're broken. And you were essentially frustrated. You guys are going through the vows that you take. I wasn't at your wedding, but I'm assuming most traditional vows are for better or worse, sickness and health.
Yep.
Is there one about finances? I don't know.
Rich or poor.
Oh, yeah, rich or poor.
Yeah. No,
and it's like you guys were essentially getting attacked because you go through. I remember when you were pregnant with Quinn, number 3.
Yeah.
And you were pregnant with him and you started to have this gestational diabetes. And it was so heavy and a lot, and it was not regulated. And it was frustrating for you because you're like, no, I'm trying to do all the things. And then essentially when people have gestational diabetes, I'm not a scholar on it, but then it goes away. And then you can kind of keep on going with your normal life. And then, so how old was Quinn when he would have been like 8 months?
It was like he was born in September.
Yep.
And then it went, and I remember being in the hospital And they're like 80, 80, 90, 92. And then I had a physical for health insurance in December. And I remember they took my blood sugar and it was 92. I'm like, wow, so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. Just having all your organs work is amazing. And then in the spring, I don't know. I just remember dropping things, and like my A1C was 14. So I don't know, like all the things that come with that. I was like, man.
Which is normally supposed to be what, around 7-ish?
It's supposed to be
5 to
80 to
7
120 is like the range that you guys are probably
What
all
would your
in.
A1C
for the
though?
A1C though.
Oh, in the 5s.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say
Usually.
probably 5.
Yeah, 5.
6 and 7 is like diabetics,
yeah.
and then 14 is like you would start to lose limbs if I didn't start doing something about it. But I think so. Then that spring, I don't know, and that's exactly when your stuff was. And I was like, I'm not feeling good, and I thought that like just weird stuff was happening to my body. It was like shaking when I was driving. I'm like, should I be driving? Am I really tired from having a baby? I just didn't know.
Yeah.
But I love that, Cap, that you pursued her heart. Then you were there for her to listen to her when she was upset about all the things, gosh, my health and everything. And you're trying to call her higher, but you're persistent with her still.
I was saying on the car right here, like it was purely the grace of God because I was going through my own crisis. Like I'm super stressed out at this point with the finances and the business. But that's where it was just I was a conduit for him to care for her the way that he wanted to. And I said yes to that. But it's funny you brought up the vows thing because in the midst of all that, I just had to really wrestle with like these really wild what if thoughts. Like, because you say those things of like through sickness or through health, through rich or through poor. But when you say them on the altar, most people say them in health.
Yep.
And at least in decent financial situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you're saying all of those things at a high on the roller coaster. It's way easier to say it then than it is like in the midst of actually going
In
through
the
it.
valley. Yeah.
But that's one thing that I think is so powerful about that. The word covenant has been something that's been really sticking out to me because it's not people. You hear this all the time. It's like, oh, marriage is just a contract. It's just a piece of paper. It's like, no, it's a covenant. And you can't have a proper understanding of what a covenant is until you understand God's covenant with you, God's unconditional commitment to you and to forgiving you and blessing you and protecting you, despite how much we don't deserve it. Yep. And when we understand that, it's like, wow, like, okay, if that is the standard, then regardless if this ever gets better, if this even gets worse, if like, my mind was going to the most random places because I didn't know that this would be like a reality, but I had the thoughts of like, what if she's like a vegetable? Like truly, what if she like couldn't walk ever again? What if I had no intimacy sexually with her ever again? Would I be willing for the rest of my life to love her and care for her as Christ loved the church? And so it was this massive, like that whole process was this like settle it at the extreme thing for me of like, yeah, I'm down.
Wrestling match going on in your mind.
Yeah.
Did you share those things with her at that time?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think we ever really we didn't really unpack it because we were just so in the thick of it.
Yep.
But it was just it was really more just about, well, I would say there'd be these kind of heated moments where she was like really frustrated because she couldn't get her blood sugars leveled, or she would like hang out with friends and then the friends like wouldn't understand why she couldn't like eat with them or what. It was like, there's so many social dynamics associated with it too, that she was super stressed out by. And she was like really hating her body, and she was really mad at God. And she was like, she felt so alone because it's also this thing that you can't really see. You can't see it on somebody unless you see them like injecting themselves with insulin multiple times a day. And so it's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing for people. So you feel very alone in it. And then she's asking me like, do you even think about what I go through? Like, do you like she's asking me basically like, am I going through this alone with you as well? And so those were the moments where I had to like tell her like, I think about this every day with you. Yeah. Every time you're about to eat a muffin, I wonder what it's going to do to your blood sugar levels.
Wow.
Yeah. Like you know, when we had a nurse basically tell me like, hey, just so you know, like if she ever goes too low and she passes out, like here's the emergency, like, you know,
Oh, yeah, you're gonna
sugar
make her
thing.
throw up and-
It'll make her throw up. Make sure you make her throw up on her side so she doesn't choke on her throw up. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is my reality now. Like if her glucometer or whatever is not working in the middle of the night, like she could go too low and just I wake up next to a dead wife. That's the reality of what we're talking about here. That really stressed me out.
Sure.
You know, like
Absolutely.
a very stressful thing. So I think those are the moments where we had these conversations where I could say like, I hate this for you as much as you do. I really do. I can't pretend like I know what it feels like, but I think those moments really kind of brought us together through it. And, but ultimately it was like the challenge was, are we going to have a marriage defined by a trial or by the victory that we have through Jesus and through his promises in the word? And I think that's been the transformation over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Was holding on to the promises.
Complete mindset, man. Just not wavering from what God's word says and saying, okay, we're gonna fight from a position of victory.
Yep.
Encouraging your wife with that, supporting her with it, the prayer and the practical of like, okay, if these are the things that you need to buy in order for you to have stability and what's going on right now, let's do it.
Oh my gosh,
but I'm not going to give up praying for you with this as well. And I'm going to invite you into it as well.
Yeah, it was expensive, man.
I bet.
All of those things.
Yeah, health stuff's not cheap, man. You want to live this healthy lifestyle and you start getting into it. Next thing you know, you're a couple grand deep pretty quick.
Yeah,
crazy.
couple grand was light. Like that would be good, but yeah.
A couple of things though, because I'm just thinking it is so hard. So here you guys are Christians. You've done your marriage the right way thus far, right? And not that you hadn't, but like you've done your marriage, done your courtship, you're dating the right way, you get married, you do all the things, and you're being faithful. And it's okay to still get angry with God. It's okay to still be like to not stay there, but be angry and frustrated and cry out to the Lord.
Yeah.
Whenever you open the Psalms, I'm like, oh my gosh, that one was written for me. And then this one was written for me. And holy cow, David, a couple thousand years ago, wrote this. No, this is for me because I can resonate so much. And through that, he is so honest and real with what's going on. Being a Christian doesn't mean you just smile all the time and everything works out great. It means God is with you. And so when you're reading the Psalms, David is so amazing about crying out, being honest with God, telling him that he doesn't like the situation, but he always circles back and says that you are faithful. You are trustworthy. And I love that because when it's a real deal, especially when your spouse gets sick. I'm just going to say potentially the men getting sick, women can have such a hard heart. And even with the man cold or anything else where it's just
a real thing. Man.
But I'm telling you, that's days of being, like, okay, it's all about me. He's not helping with the kids. He's not doing this because he's sick. Well, geez, when I'm sick, I have to do all these different things. And that's where we lived in our marriage for a long time, and I'm not proud of it. But once we got back together, I was able to bring up my bitterness and resentment that I had over little times. And he was like, wow, I just want to be taken care of. Yeah, maybe I'm being a baby and I just want to be taken care of. And so I knew how to minister to his heart. And what you guys were going through was not a cold. It was not short-lived. It was when you were pregnant. It was afterwards. And then through this other blessing, number 4 baby, and still crying out, I don't like this, but we're together. I'm not leaving you. I don't like it either, but I'm going to be here with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about where you're at now because business, like you pick up where you left off.
So it's starting of January of 2023. Like I left off with God saying, Cap, what if I was your only client?
Yep.
What if you only had to make videos for me? And I was like, well, you would be the most enjoyable client to work with, but
Always faithful.
can you pay me well enough to make this work? So that was like attacking a very limited belief in who he is as a prosperer and who he is as a rewarder. And but we are at this place where we had 4 months of savings, personal savings. I had 1,000 subscribers on YouTube at the time, and I had virtually no income because all of the money that was coming in for Reveal, the agency, was going to pay our team. And so I turned to my wife and I said, hey, babe, I know that you know, the last time I went all in on a business endeavor, I didn't handle it the right way because I did not invite you into the process. So this is what I feel like the Lord is saying. I got 4 months of savings. He's telling me to create content for him. I'm asking you to have my back for 4. Yes. Yeah.
4.
The 4.
Wow.
I'm asking you to have my back for 4 months. And then after 4 months, if it doesn't work out, I'll go get a job. I'll go get traditional health insurance. I'll go take care of all that. I'm just asking that you would have my back for 4 months. And she said, well, that sounds great, but how are you going to monetize that? And I was like, I have no idea. I haven't really thought that far ahead yet. I just know I'm tired of taking my vision or his vision and putting my version on it. I want to do what he's telling me to do purely and trust that he's going to make it work. And so she said, well, I know that you were made to do this, and let's do it for 4 months. 4 months, I got your back. And when I say got your back, like she's not working. We have 3 kids. So she's at home with the kids. There's like no income coming. We're purely living off of savings for 4 months. And but I had her blessing. And so it was so cool because I felt like I was right with God and I was right with her.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, we're going all in on this.
Come on, man.
So I started hammering away. I started creating 3 to 4 short form 60-second videos every single day about God, about the culture, about the intersection between the two. And for over the course of 4 months, I wasn't making any money doing it, but God was blessing it and was increasing it. And it was challenging, but for 4 months I did that, and it took me 4 months to grow from 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. And then after that, like literally at that end of the finish line of those 4 months, it went from 10,000 to 100,000 in 28 days.
Wow.
It just exploded. It just like totally blew up. And then that momentum carried off through December. And then in December, I hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And then the monetization picked up after 4 months. So then that became like my full-time income. I made more money in 2023 than I ever made in my entire life. So, and then 2024 is going even further than that.
Come on, man.
Yeah, dude, it's been insane. It's been insane, but it was so fun because like now we're really doing this together.
Yes.
Like I'm obviously like, I'm the guy who's creating the videos. I'm the face on my channel, but we just went to a business, or we went to Florida this past month, and I was at a business conference. I took her and the kids so that they could play at the beach all day long. But I had this kind of breakthrough moment where I was like, I need you. Like, I need you as my partner for everything that I'm doing. So I'm going to like literally make a job description for you. You're going to be the chief prophetess of the organization, which means, you know, I don't need you to know like spreadsheets. I don't need you to really even understand content creation. I just want you to trust in that spiritual instinct that you have, that discernment. Because I'll tell you what, I've made the mistake before when she gets a gut check and she's like, I don't know about that, and I've not listened to it, it's cost me big time.
Yep.
So I've just learned like, hey, if she smells something funny, I'm trusting her sense, and I don't even need an explanation. I'm like, cool, all right. And so
It's amazing.
It's really cool. But then her other role is through all of the health stuff that she's learned is like she's like my wellness coach. So she helps make sure that like I'm hydrated and I got good clean food and I'm sleeping well and
Not using the microwave.
Come on.
So like she's optimizing my life.
I don't know about
just
that
the
one,
other
but-
dude, it's so funny. Just yesterday, I had like you probably can't see, but I have one tooth here that's like a little like shade darker than the other teeth. Maybe you can see and you're like, bro, it's pretty evident. But she was like, hey, I just scheduled you an appointment to get your teeth whitened because that's the moneymaker. So like you got to go keep that white and bright. But I'm like, dude, like it's so fun because we're really working on this together.
Yeah, partners.
And it's not like I got my thing and she's got her thing.
Yep.
It's like, no, we're unified. We're taking the mountain together. And we're believing for a complete breakthrough in our health still too. And like our relationship with God together has totally been transformed. So it's been fun. Like it was a wild ride, but if we had to go through what we had to go through to be where we are, I don't know about you, but I would go through it all over again because where we are now is way better than where we've ever been.
Yeah. Joy, just to wrap it up, and we'll end with this and we'll close this thing off. But for you, what's it been like on your side of it, to have the vantage point that you've had to watch that accelerate, that growth in the business, and to trust Kappas through all of this? What's it been like for you?
No, it was really exciting. I was really excited, and I actually felt a little bit of emotion I was reflecting when you were talking, because I was thinking back of our old house and our old office, and so many times when I'd walk into your old office and you were like trying this and trying that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like he's brought us so far. Like, just for the fact that you have direction now is like who cares about the money? You know what your calling is. Like,
Sure.
There was just no like, it was always a guessing game, because you were really seeking and trying to get it right. But I've always thought that he should do like a podcast or speak or have more outlets with his, I just think he has so much to give away as far as like
It's true.
prophetic stuff, interpretation of the word, practical application, and then cultural commentary is so, I think that we really need it right now. And so I just think for you to be out there, we need you. We need you in the media space, because there's so much there's so many other voices that we don't want people hearing. So I just think one thing about you is I feel like you're always so on. Like you're so anointed. Like whenever I think like, I don't know what I think about that, you just have like a word out of nowhere. I'm like, well, how did he come up with that? But it's just like, it's your secret place shining through, because I know that you've really made that a priority, and that's where it all happens. You just get downloads from heaven, and I'm so proud of you, and I think that you do need to share it with the world. So I think that there's no better job for you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Love you. See, she's my biggest cheerleader.
That's right. That's what it's all about, man. The
Yeah.
way that you described the first version of your business launchings into your second one, it's like, there's no wonder God's favor's on this thing. When you get it right with him,
Yes.
our spouse is in the joint, it's a joint venture with our spouse, regardless of what profession is. Even if we both work outside of the home, work for other people, it's like, hey, we're both in that together.
Yes.
But I think it's even more powerful when we've got this entrepreneurial mindset. We're launching a business. It's like, we own this together.
Yeah.
Even if the other person isn't entirely involved with the business aspects of it, we are in this together.
Yep.
And how we navigate that always needs to be that conversation of like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. You don't have to know all the spreadsheets. We always say it this way: one person loves spreadsheets, the other person loves satin sheets. You're gonna have one that loves to look at the money, and the other one that loves to spend the money and figure out a way to make it enjoyable. But when you have those business relationships with your spouse, it just sets you up for so much more success to be able to walk through all of the ebbs and flows of business.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
I think one thing, it's our life, our marriage is integrated.
Yep.
It's harmonious. It's not compartmentalized. It's not my thing over here. Even this year, quite honestly, like one of my biggest intentions this year, and I want to thank you honestly, because you helped challenge me in this. You had a dream about, some shenanigans happening like on the road. I can't remember if I was in the dream or
You were not, but it made me think of you right afterwards.
It made you think of me of like, just not giving the enemy any room for, craziness to happen while I'm traveling and doing things. But so my thing was like, this year I want to integrate my family as much as possible in work trips.
Yep.
So I took my family to Florida, for example. I have a couple of trips coming up where I'm like, I'm probably going to take Brave and Raven on some business trips so that they can kind of see what I do. And
love it, man.
Yeah, like really make it like a family business with the family. So
you had I want to touch on this because I think it was a really powerful moment, and I loved it when you shared it with me. You were at a PDB event, and he said something about marriage from the stage.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, can you share that quick?
Yeah, so I went to the Vault conference, and there was about 6,000 people there in attendance, and he asked the question. He's like, "Hey, if you are married, like, why did you not bring your spouse here?" He said this to the crowd, and I'm thinking, well, like, man, I would have loved to, but I got one of the high tickets, and it was like pretty expensive. So I was like, well, that's one reason why, and also we have all these kids. Like, what are we supposed to do? And so he said, I want everybody here who came with their spouse. I want you and your spouse to stand up right now. And I'm telling you, it was like hundreds of couples, hundreds, even in the CEO seats, which is like that high level ticket. So I was like, dang, these people. And he said, you better believe, like, do you think these people like didn't have to organize things and get babysitters to make this sort of thing happen? And I was so healthily convicted and challenged. I was like, you're right. Because he said, how are you going to invest in yourself to grow while you're here and then expect yourself to be able to explain everything that you got out of this weekend with your spouse when you leave?
Come on.
And I was like, you're 100% right. I don't want to be 10 steps ahead with this vision and have to like make her feel like she's tagging along.
Yeah.
So literally as soon as I finished that conference, I'd swiped my credit card and bought 2 for the next one. So we're going to be going together next year. And I told her, I was like, hey, like there's gonna be a lot of business jargon thrown around. Don't pretend like you need to know it all. Don't like check out, like lean in, but I just want you there with me. Because if you're there with me, then we're gonna have really great conversations together and be able to grow together at the same pace.
The proximity of that, like that's what I love about what you guys are doing. And why it was so important for us to have you on the show, because I think it's something that is so missed. We grow up with looking at our parents and obviously baby boomer generation, whatever they're in. We live these 2 separate careers, but as there's so many people out in the space today that are looking to become entrepreneurs one way or another. Yeah. And as business has just shifted to not so much of a 9-to-5 job anymore. It's really 24/7. Let's take a day off. Whatever that looks like for you, we tend to do it in isolation without our spouse. And man, if we really want to see marriages thrive, do it with your spouse. Man, invite the family into the conversation. Let them be a part of the business. That's what legacy looks like, of passing this down to the next generation, because we can accumulate all kinds of things, but the culture within our home is what matters most.
I think if I can just say this too, because a big conversation that's been happening over the past few years in the workplace is like the work-life balance conversation. And I think like work-life balance is not the right way of looking at it. It's not like, 5 hours here, 5 hours there, right? That's what kind of balance looks like. To me, it's about harmony. How can these things live together in harmony? How can my work life, because as an entrepreneur, you get it. You're thinking about this thing all the time. It's not
Never
like
stops.
You can't just say like, okay, 5 o'clock, I get to leave the office. It's like you're thinking about things and solving problems, and you're inspired in certain moments too. It's not always bad stuff. It's like you're thinking of new things to help move things forward. And so to create a harmony where it's like, hey, like we're in this together, but then also creating these boundaries that are healthy so that you're able to, Friday, for example, is my day off. I shut off my phone. I'm with the family. We go to Val's Pumpkin Patch in the fall. That's, I feel like, what creates a very harmonious environment where all of these things can win at the same time.
But also when you tell me, like, when you invite me into it, like when you say, this person, I've been waiting to get on, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, this person called me, or I got, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, go make a video. I don't care if you're around tonight because you invited me into the excitement of it, rather than like, I never know what he's doing. All I know is he's gone again. And all I know is that he's still working and I had dinner an hour ago. But when you like bring me into the excitement, I'm so excited for him that I don't even care. I'm like, yes, go talk to that guy. I can't believe he finally called you, or whatever it is. Or like even church stuff. Like if you're just like, I have to go pray for someone, I'm like, ugh, you're gone again. You're missing this again. But if I'm invested into the reason why you're praying, I'm like, what can I do? I care too.
Yeah.
Because I actually know about it,
That's huge.
Yes. Love that.
Because on the flip side, you have success. One of you has success, and there's no one to share it with.
Yeah.
Like here you are doing all these great things, and had you not invested in each other throughout the entire process, what's the point of having, it's like the scripture, what's the point in having the whole world without your soul? And really you guys are united as one. And so it's like a lot of wives get bitter though. If their husband is pursuing something, whether it's career and they have the kids, if they don't make it through that trial period, when it's not just 1, it's 2 and 3 as they grow throughout their marriage. You said earlier, if we had to go through everything again to get here, I would. And that's like us. And that's when you talk to people who've been married for more than a minute, And they didn't have an easy road. It may have been different, but it's not easy. And I just want to speak to those couples. I mean, everybody knows that we think persistence through, like, just get through it, just do the next right thing. What would you guys say to the couple that may be in a season right now of really difficult trial and about to tap?
You got anything?
I would say that to encourage themselves in the spiritual laws of God's word, that there will be a harvest if they obey, if they stay humble, if they repent, and if they really apply God's word to the situation. Because in Isaiah it says, just as the rain falls and goes into the ground and produces plants or something like that, your word doesn't return void.
Right.
So if they are like purposing in their heart to like apply God's word to their situation, it for sure will bear a harvest and it's going to be worth it. But if they like give up and grow weary, and they're going to have pain either way. So
It's good.
That's great. I would say specifically for the men, permission to lead. I think sometimes as a man, you feel like you wait for permission from your spouse to tell you, like, I respect you. You can lead. You know what I mean? And leadership doesn't just mean barking orders.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But like,
In fact, it doesn't.
it doesn't.
Right.
But there's a time when you got to set the record straight.
Yep.
So don't get me wrong. Like, there's a time when it's like, hey, like we're out of alignment. We got to move it this way. Yep. So, but it's coming from a place of, and you can't do that unless you really build rapport and build a foundation of love and care and consistency. Right. But I think too many men have never been given the permission to lead. And they think like, man, is this okay? Like, God made you to be a leader. In fact, I would say most women, whether they know it or don't know it, they actually want their husband to lead with strength and compassion, but also strength, confidence, conviction, care, all of that. And so if you are in that place, it's like, if you don't have a model for that, if you're like, man, I didn't see that growing up. My dad never spoke that over me. I didn't see that happen in my home or whatever. You know, getting right with God is not just for salvation, for forgiveness of sin, which is obviously the most important thing. But God wants to redeem every other area of your life. And I'll tell you, like, I've learned what it means to be a good husband by my relationship with God, seeing how consistent he is through the word, how he's consistent with his people. And even in my personal relationship, it's like, that's almost like my spiritual huddle in the morning. Like, we get in the huddle, he downloads to me, I share my frustrations with him. He gives me encouragement. He gives me a game plan to love my wife and my kids. And then I go and run the play. Yep. And so for the men out there, be encouraged. God designed you for it. He designed you to lead. So permission to lead.
What you just described was that secret place that Joy spoke about.
Yeah, exactly.
You get right in the secret place so that you can go out and lead well.
Yep.
Love it. We're so proud of you guys. We love doing life with you guys. Like, some of our biggest supporters, and super grateful for you, what you're doing. And man, the way you guys have shown what it looks like to have an amazing marriage. Your kids are amazing. Joy, as we've been doing this, like, every time I look at you, I just see brave. It's wild. I don't know that we've ever spoken this much and had to make eye contact, because it's usually shorter sessions, but you make a lot of the same facial expressions as,
that's cool.
I should say Brave makes the same ones as you.
That's super cool.
Super cool. So love you guys. Super proud of you.